Chapter 193. The purple gold gourd's fog directly brought the old devil back to the space which had been bound to him back then. This was a small world, which was also the place where the Gua Pai army had first been established by the old devil 1,000 years ago. As soon as the old devil landed here, he lay prone on the ground and gasped for breath. It had been too dangerous just now. He had no doubt that if it hadn't been for this purple gold gourd's quick escape, he would have been beaten to death by the other party. Apart from the 2 lumps in his chest which he couldn't adapt to for the time being, Jiang Liuyue's body was pretty well suited to it. The only drawback was that he couldn't unleash his full power with this body. He had to find a way to restore his full strength as soon as possible. How much do you know about that killer Taoist? After a moment, the old devil calmed down and asked as he looked at the stone ghost mask in his hand. Jiang Liuyue's voice came from the stone ghost mask. I've never seen this person before, but he's very strong and his whereabouts are uncertain. He only kills the most vicious and evil people. The more vicious a person is, the more tragic their death will be. The more vicious they are, the more unsightly their deaths will be. The old devil laughed. Since the founding of Huaxiu Nation, how many old devils had there been who could strike fear into the hearts of the whole world? The old devil felt that this was simply a declaration of war. Was this a challenge? But I never expected this legendary killer Taoist to be so powerful, and have actually cultivated his body to the level of a sage. Jiang Liyue couldn't help sighing. Even Lord Devil Emperor almost suffered a great loss. The corners of Devil Emperor Guapai's mouth twitched. Hee, that was just my venerable self being careless. If my venerable self can find a body that is 100% compatible with me and seize the opportunity to return to my peak, this mere killer Taoist won't even be worth mentioning. Jiang Liyue didn't dare refute him. Through the stone ghost mask, she looked at the world she was in. Lord Devil Emperor, what is this place? This is a small world that my venerable self created back then. But this small world is different from other small worlds. Many people like to use magic treasures to create small worlds, and the gourd is the most common. The foundation of this small world is an alternate space. It's a space completely parallel to the real world. The old devil pointed at the magic array behind him. Do you see this magic array? This is the exit of this small world. As long as we step out of here, we will be able to return to reality. I remember that the location I chose all those years ago was a treasured land of mountains and rivers. I wonder what sort of scene it will be when I step out from here. Listening to Devil Emperor Guapai's introduction, Jiang Liyue was deeply astonished. The old devil had been sealed in the stone ghost mask for over 1,000 years, and this world hadn't been taken care of for over 1,000 years. The vitality of this small world was related to the spirit energy source of its owner. Logically speaking, after being sealed for so long, this world should have long been desolate, but contrary to Jiang Liyue's expectations, this small world which the 5 of them had taken care of was actually still operating normally. Thanks to your fleshly body, I was able to activate the purple gold gourd to return here. I once hid a lot of magic treasures in this small world, and now it's finally time to put them to use. The old devil smiled slightly. Taking the stone ghost mask with him, his feet shook, and they arrived at a place that looked like a grassland. However, the color of this grass was a little strange. It was actually black. Jiang Liyue felt that her horizons had been broadened. Lord Devil Emperor, where are we? The place we're standing on is the boundary pillar. This is the pillar that supports this small world. However, this small world was specially built, and the boundary pillar that supports it is the head of a humanoid troll that I brought out of the gate between worlds. Even though my venerable self has been sealed, this humanoid troll can provide me with a second spirit energy source. The old devil replied, this is the place in my small world with the most abundant spirit energy. If you continue to cultivate the recovery technique here, you'll be able to greatly reduce the time it takes for you to recover. If you quickly recover to your peak condition, my venerable self will also benefit. In the future, I'll be able to enter your body for a much longer time. So we're now on top of this humanoid troll's head? Jiang Liyue asked. That's right, that's right. This black grass is this humanoid troll's hair. The old devil nodded. I've already taken control of this humanoid troll and turned it into my venerable self's puppet. Jiang Luyue, then Lord Devil Emperor's boundary pillar is really special. The old devil smiled slightly. He, compared with boundary pillar, I actually prefer another term. Jiang Luyue, what is it? The old devil, human pillar strength. Jiang Luyue, it was already evening when Wang Ling returned from the convenience store. For the first time, Wang Ling sent Odd Zhuo a text message. Since the last time he had accepted this disciple, he hadn't had much use for him. But today, Wang Ling finally realized how useful he could be. He planned to ask Odd Zhuo to bail Third Saint out of the police station first. After all, it wasn't Third Saint who had lost contact with the deliverer man. There was no reason for Third Saint to be the sole scapegoat. Very quickly, Odd Zhuo called him back. Wang Ling picked up the phone, but before he could say anything, Odd Zhuo had already rambled on so much that Wang Ling couldn't get a word in edgewise. Shifu, don't worry, you're talking about that brother Third Saint, right? I'll send someone to negotiate with him right away. Oh, that's right, Shifu, once this is done, will there be a reward? Wang Ling opened his mouth and very much wanted to say, do you want a kiss or not? But he felt that saying it would sound a little gay, which wasn't good for his cold and aloof image, so in the end, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Odd Zhuo didn't receive a reply, but he still persisted. Shifu, don't misunderstand, I don't want any material reward. I just want something that particularly invigorates my spirit, where I feel especially comfortable when I move, and then I'll be full of energy every day. Wang Ling, after a moment of silence, Odd Zhuo felt that his words were more likely to cause misunderstandings, so he corrected himself. Shifu, don't misunderstand, I'm talking about a technique. After that, Wang Ling hung up the phone. After pondering for a bit, he sent Odd Zhuo the latest set of eye exercises. This set of eye exercises was a brand new upgrade. When Odd Zhuo had graduated from number 60 high back then, it had still been a regional trial version, and hadn't been fully popularized at all. It had to be said that Odd Zhuo was quite efficient. It had only been half an hour since the phone call. Wang Ling turned on the news and saw Third Saint walk out of the police station surrounded by a group of reporters. To protect his privacy, his face had been covered in mosaics. Sir, could you reveal the details of the mass disappearance of the delivery workers this time? Some people think that you're actually an accomplice, right? It's only because there isn't enough evidence that you've been released, a female reporter asked Third Saint with a microphone in her hand. Third Saint glanced at the female reporter and said only 2 words. 1, completely fabricated. 2, already had a lawyer handle it. Wang Ling. Chapter 194. June 12, Sunday of the 7th week of school. It seemed that the rice ball takeout rider incident had come to an end for the time being, but it was still troublesome to clean up the mess. After Odd Zhuo fished Third Saint out, he began to assist grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in the follow-up investigation and cleanup. That night, they finished recording the statements of the 21 riders in the gourd. Although they were all souls now, their statements were still legally binding under Huaxiu Nation's cultivation laws. That's the basic situation. After a night of questioning, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal explained the incident in the chat group and fully promoted his good Samaritan spirit. The next thing we need to do is help these 21 surviving delivery riders apply for accident insurance from the insurance company. Early in the morning, Wang Ling scrolled through the chat logs in the group. Accident insurance? Salian Jinren was puzzled. There are 2 ways to deal with this external danger. The first was to pay compensation to the family. This was for those who had already died. I will also think of a way to help the families of the 11 delivery men who couldn't be saved. The second option was to create a physical body for them. It's also within the accident insurance, where the soul is relatively intact. How do I make a physical body? Salian Jinren asked. If one's realm is too high, of course it can't be done, but if it's below the gold core stage, it can still be done by combining the universal medical spirit lotus with the clay. But it's a little expensive, and is generally used to make limbs for the disabled. The cost of making a full body is astronomical for ordinary cultivators, but if it's covered by insurance, the cost is almost negligible, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied. Spirit Lotus? Wang Ling peeked at the screen. For some reason, he suddenly thought of that Neza from the fairy tales, Saiyinjinren, but they are all in the gourd now. How do we apply for this? Even if it can be done, it has to be signed in person, right? It doesn't matter. Their souls just can't see the light. We can use their oral recording as a commission and go to the notary office to have it notarized and apply to be their agent. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent a sinister smile emoji. Of course, I won't be doing this for free. After I discussed it with them yesterday, they agreed to give each of them 20% of the compensation insurance plan as my errand fee. Wang Ling. Saiyinjinren, true immortal. I really thought you were a good person. Fellow Taoist Sailian, you're in the wrong here. Think about it, we've saved this group of people. If they don't do anything for us, do you think their conscience won't hurt? Saiyinjinren, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, that's right, this Senior Immortal is a good person, but I'm not the Virgin Mary. I still have to take what I deserve. Furthermore, the maintenance fee for Brother Two's gourd's small world is not small. When we run errands, we have to spend a lot of money on public relations. The insurance and compensation are the most troublesome. It won't be settled without at least 20 to 30 trips. Listening to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's words, Wang Ling nodded with deep understanding. Back then, when old man Wang applied for his pension during his first year of retirement, every time he went through the procedures, he would either be missing documents or stamps. The process took as long as half a year. Apart from that, there's one more important thing, and that is to find out the old devil's location as soon as possible. As long as that ancient dagger is restored, Brother Ling will be able to use his great magic power to directly track down the devil. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal typed swiftly, I'm guessing that the purple gold gourd is connected to an alternate space. As long as the old devil doesn't show up, it's almost impossible to track him down. But that's a magic sword from ancient times. Is there really a way to restore it? Bulang Blade Immortal asked in the chat group. It can be restored. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, this magic sword looks badly damaged, but it's actually only the middle section that's been crushed. The front and the hilt of the sword are still in good condition. As long as Dharmaraja uses the power of the godly thunder inheritance to weld the dagger together, it'll be fine. I've already told Dharmaraja to prepare it, but he's probably busy, so he hasn't seen the message. 9 times man, Saiyinjinren and Bulang Blade Immortal. There was such a thing. I've already told Dharmaraja to prepare it, but he's probably busy, so he hasn't seen the message. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, Brother Ling, you still have the dagger fragment. I'll have brother to come find you in the afternoon, and you can go together. Yeah. I know you're watching me. After reading it, Wang Ling immediately fell silent. Then he closed the chat window and pretended not to see it. At 1:00 in the afternoon, Immortal Toya appeared punctually at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. When Mother Wang opened the door, she immediately saw this handsome, fair-skinned, gray-haired, ancient-looking man. Today, Immortal Toya hadn't brought his big medicinal gourd with him, and was carrying a long sword on his back, which made him look even more ethereal. Mother Wang thought this person was too handsome. Although she thought little Lei was also very handsome, it was clear that Grenade-throwing was more of an amusing idiot, so she had always felt that if Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal went into the entertainment industry, he would probably just be a comedian. However, her first impression of this gray-haired young man was that he was someone who could hold up the scene. She had the temperament of a superstar. Seeing Mother Wang appear, Immortal Toya immediately stood still and bowed deeply to her. Hello, Senior, I'm here to see Lingjinren. He knew that the people who lived in the Wang family's small villa were all extraordinary people. He had heard Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal say before that there was an old man who was even more mysterious and unfathomable, a great senior in the cultivation world. Hence, when he came to the Wang family's small villa, he had come with a pious heart as if he were on a pilgrimage. Ling Ling, your friend is here to see you. Mother Wang opened the door and shouted out of habit, but Wang Ling had in fact sensed it earlier on, and took the initiative to come downstairs. After that, he changed into a pair of white canvas shoes and left with Immortal Toya, shoulder to shoulder. As they left, Mother Wang cupped her face in her hands and looked at their backs with an intoxicated expression. Ah, no. This was a boy. Ling Ling was also a straight man. Mother Wang suddenly realized. For a split second just now, she suddenly felt that Ling Ling and this young man seemed to be a good match. Mother Wang decided to calm down first. She was already so old, but she actually still let her imagination run wild. That really wasn't right. Immortal Toya had come in a car this time. Looking at the luxurious black supercar, Wang Ling hesitated for a moment, but in the end got in. Wang Ling actually didn't like transportation very much. He could directly teleport or run to many places, but he also didn't like to expose too many things in front of people he wasn't familiar with. He and Immortal Toya had only met a few times. If he revealed too many things, that would be too unreserved. There actually weren't many people whom Wang Ling could fully acknowledge. Chapter 195. But having said that, Wang Ling didn't dislike Immortal Toya because he was a pretty good brother. Because he was a pretty good brother, Wang Ling had left his good looks as an option for bonus points, but he had left this option at the very end. This was a world where looks mattered, but Wang Ling didn't care about looks. Appearance wasn't important to Wang Ling. Because his face could be pinched without surgery, he could do whatever he wanted. Because he had been too handsome and popular with his classmates as a child, Wang Ling had modified his face many times at a very young age, adjusting it to average according to the public's aesthetic standards each year. Wang Ling's current appearance was probably above average, and that was enough. What was the use of being good-looking? At critical moments, he could only sing, "Look at this face, it's long and wide, just like this bowl. It's big and round." The reason why Wang Ling felt that Immortal Toya was a good person was because he felt that this person was pretty good at getting things done. They had just met face to face the last time, and Immortal Toya had already pretty much figured out Wang Ling's character. As Immortal Toya drove, his heart was as clear as a mirror. This Ling Jinren didn't like to talk, and even if he had a question, he was too lazy to move his lips. Telepathy was his most common method of communication. But sometimes, it had to be said that telepathy was actually pretty awkward. If there were no outsiders present, it would be fine. In a situation where there were outsiders around, if someone used telepathy to communicate with you, only to see you talking to yourself, Immortal Toya had always felt that this was a little silly, and if the two of them didn't speak and completely communicated telepathically, it would be even more awkward. Furthermore, this was a pretty impolite behavior, which stemmed from the thousand-year-old Taoist etiquette that cultivators had practiced. If a senior spoke telepathically to you, as a junior, you absolutely couldn't keep your mouth shut and not answer. So, in view of this situation, Immortal Toya had figured out a way to be friendly with Ling Jinren and ease the awkwardness of carrying out a mission without losing decorum. That was to learn to take the initiative, think through the problem comprehensively, guess what this senior Ling wanted to ask, and then explain it one by one. Wang Ling personally quite liked this method. Now that Immortal Toya was by his side, not only did he not have to move his lips, he could even give up on thinking. "Senior Ling, we're going to the Shao family compound now," Immortal Toya said as he drove. Shao family compound. Wang Ling hadn't expected this to be a familiar place. He suddenly remembered that when Lotus Sun had asked him out, there had been a small bit of trouble. Now that he thought about it carefully, that day had probably been the beginning of all his grudges with Shadow Stream. The Lightning King in the group works in the Shao family compound. Immortal Toya continued, "Dharmaraja's godly thunder inheritance is a holy relic. He is the last descendant of the Thunder clan, and the heir to this holy relic." Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. If Immortal Toya hadn't mentioned it, he would have almost forgotten about this thing. This was a sacred treasure left behind by the various ancient clans during the Great Doqi era. It was called a sacred relic by the common people, and only the descendants of the ancient clans could inherit it. However, more than half of the descendants of the 12 ancient clans had disappeared, and the whereabouts of many sacred relics were unknown. Wang Ling's understanding of lightning Dharmaraja had been limited. He had never expected this Dharmaraja to actually be a descendant of the Thunder clan, and to have even inherited a holy relic. Wang Ling had always thought that this Dharmaraja was an educator. The outside world has actually misunderstood Dharmaraja all these years. Dharmaraja used the godly thunder inheritance to cure a lot of teenagers who were addicted to virtual games. After all, cultivation is also about doing good deeds and accumulating merit, but that isn't Dharmaraja's main business. Immortal Toya explained solemnly, Dharmaraja's real job is in the Shao family compound, where he works. Wang Ling. Immortal Toya, the buildings in the Shao family compound are all antiques, and sometimes they're damaged even if modern scientific methods are used to repair them. But the godly thunder inheritance can break down and reassemble the broken parts, and can even weld them together. So Dharmaraja is actually a repair engineer. Furthermore, he's specially employed by the Shao family compound. Wang Ling, this was the second time he came to the Shao family compound. This time, Lotus Sun wasn't around, and Wang Ling couldn't use the green passage. But he could use the internal staff passage. Dharmaraja called the security office at the entrance, and the security guard opened the gate to let the two of them in together. Speaking of which, there weren't many visitors in the Shao family compound today. Since many of the scenic spots were under maintenance, a lot of customers who had bought tickets for the 3-day tour chose to take a break today. Of course, the Shao family compound also gave everyone compensation, which was a 500 yuan voucher for the Shao family compound's barbecue shop. This barbecue shop was owned by the Shao clan, and the biggest difference between it and the other barbecue shops outside was that it used an unusual flame to roast meat, which gave it a different flavor. The security guard uncle very generously gave Immortal Toya and Wang Ling a voucher each. You can use it once you spend 1,000 yuan or more. You can use as many vouchers as you want for the next 3 days. Is this really okay? Immortal Toya accepted the voucher and was a little embarrassed. We're just here to look for someone, it doesn't matter, I still have a lot here. The security guard uncle shook his head and went back to his little pavilion to his desk. Immortal Toya took a look, and when he pulled open the drawer, he saw stacks of vouchers in denominations of 500 yuan. The most important thing was that there was no date on these vouchers. The higher-ups printed too many vouchers and left all the extra ones with me. These vouchers will last me for several months. After saying that, the security guard uncle rubbed his beer belly. I've been working here for so long, I'm finally getting some benefits. Look at how thin I've become. Wang Ling, after officially entering the Shao family compound, Dharmaraja took the initiative to send Immortal Toya a text message to say that he was still doing maintenance at Treasure Cliff. It would be at least an hour before he could come out. Looking at the time, Immortal Toya exhaled and looked at Wang Ling. Senior, how about we go to the barbecue shop to eat something first? 2 vouchers, it'd be a waste not to use them. Wang Ling didn't say anything, and just nodded in agreement. But when he arrived at the Shao clan's barbecue shop, he found that there was already a long line of big-name customers at the entrance. As long as you spent 1,000 yuan, you could use the 500 yuan voucher as collateral. In theory, you could eat for free. This kind of compensation was nothing for a nouveau riche family like the Shao clan. And this directly led to the unprecedented scene at the entrance. This scene reminded Wang Ling of a popular gourmet shop he had visited before, which was famous for selling green dumplings. Chapter 196. It was an unprecedentedly grand scene at the entrance of the barbecue shop. There were so many people that it felt like the air they breathed in was scorching hot. The waiters in the barbecue shop were so busy that even the people who were originally in charge of the queue at the entrance started to serve drinks to the customers in line. Wang Ling felt that this was a bit of a waste of time. Given the volume of customers, Dharmaraja's work would probably be over before they could even get in. But at that moment, a girl suddenly walked over from the front of the line and extended an invitation to Immortal Toya a little embarrassedly. This girl was from a girl group who had been specially invited to the Xiao family compound to dance. However, several members of the girl group had urgent matters to attend to today, which directly led to a lack of seats. This was originally just a small matter, it was just that a few people were missing. But when this girl turned her head in the crowd, she suddenly noticed the two little cuties standing at the back of the crowd. Immortal Toya didn't say anything, and just stood there with his arms crossed and a smile. Then, for some inexplicable reason, he had been invited by a girl from the girl group to fill a table. There were now several hundred people in line. Even if they had to fill a table in order, Wang Ling didn't think it would be their turn. Now, Wang Ling kind of wanted to take back his, "What's the use of being good-looking," remark. Sure enough, in this era where looks were everything, everything was fleeting. Appearance was justice. Now, he didn't have to line up, but Wang Ling felt a little unnatural. He had to admit that he was actually a rather antisocial person, and it always felt a little weird to eat at the same table with people he didn't know, especially strangers whom he hadn't even chatted with online. Although Wang Ling had to admit that these girls were pretty cute, he didn't like them. Including Wang Ling and Immortal Toya, a total of 10 people were led into a private room by a waiter. A young girl in a short black skirt with eyes so big that it made people's hair stand on end introduced herself. "You can call me Bamboo, I'm the deputy leader." Originally, there had been 12 people in the group preparing the barbecue, but now 4 of them had left. Because of the performance, the cost of the barbecue would be directly reimbursed by the Xiao family compound, so in theory, Wang Ling and Immortal Toya's vouchers wouldn't be of any use, and they could just freeload for food and drinks. When they entered the private room, Wang Ling took the initiative to sit down in a corner, his face expressionless. "Immortal Toya, everyone, I'm sorry, this senior isn't good with words." Bamboo shook her head. It's fine. We invited you here in the first place. Feel free to order whatever you want to eat. It's fine as long as everyone is casual." They passed the menus around in order, and when it was Wang Ling's turn, there was a spirit light in his hand, and a plastic bag appeared. "Immortal Toya, Senior, this is..." He had seen this plastic bag before. This was the Xiaolongbao-flavored crispy noodle snack which the old man had prepared last time, and he still kept it. Wang Ling thought that he had finally found an opportunity to eat it today. If he roasted it, he could eat it hot. Without another word, he directly put the crispy noodle snacks on the barbecue board, and very quickly, the aroma of the crispy noodle snacks the old man had specially made wafted out. A few girls from the girl group sniffed the tear-inducing soup dumpling-flavored crispy noodle snacks, and their eyes gradually became moist. "Ladies, what's wrong?" Immortal Toya didn't know what to do when he saw the girls' red eyes. Bamboo woke up from her runny nose, and tears were already swirling in her big eyes. "I don't know either, this aroma was indescribable, it actually reminded them of their mother's cooking." Thus, before the barbecue in this private room had officially started, everyone except Wang Ling was wiping away their tears. The most frightening thing was that this aroma gradually permeated the entire barbecue restaurant, and everyone's faces were covered in tears. It was almost 1:00 in the afternoon when Dharmaraja finished what he was doing, which was longer than Immortal Toya had imagined. After saying goodbye to Bamboo, Immortal Toya and Wang Ling left the barbecue restaurant. Immortal Toya's eyes were red. In the barbecue restaurant just now, he had been studying how to use spirit energy to seal his tear ducts. As it turned out, this was a very difficult operation. It was like how some people could bend their fingers to unimaginable angles, while some people couldn't bend their fingers even when they were about to break them. Dharmaraja sent Immortal Toya a text message, and the two of them went to the Xiao family compound's public service center. Dharmaraja was the office director of the service department in the service center. After knocking on the door, Wang Ling saw a slightly plump man with slick-back black hair sitting in the office, sweating profusely. He was wearing goggles around his neck to prevent the godly thunder inheritance from blinding him. "Brother too." Dharmaraja stood up from his chair and looked at Immortal Toya in pleasant surprise. These two people had met before and had even had a few drinks together, so they could be considered drinking buddies. Lightning Dharmaraja turned his gaze to the silent Wang Ling and cupped his fists in a salute. This must be Senior Ling, right? Senior Ling is really younger than I thought. Like most people, Lightning Dharmaraja felt incredulous at first glance when he saw Wang Ling. A person with such monstrous strength could actually be this young, and the vitality in his body hadn't dissipated. This was too well kept. Wang Ling didn't make any more small talk. He nodded in greeting and directly took out the broken ancient magic sword. Dharmaraja instantly frowned. What's wrong? Immortal Toya asked. Dharmaraja raised the magnifying glass on the table and shone it at the magic sword. I just feel that the damage to this magic sword is much more serious than it looks in the photos. The fracture is uneven, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult to weld it. Immortal Toya, can it be fixed? Of course I can fix it. Give me 2 days, I'll take it back and fix it. Saying this, Dharmaraja turned to Wang Ling, but I have a small request. Immortal Toya had a bad feeling. What do you want? Senior Ling is very busy. Lightning Dharmaraja, brother too, don't worry. I won't steal your boyfriend. Immortal Toya, Lightning Dharmaraja didn't beat around the bush and simply went straight to the point. I've heard of Senior Ling's prowess before, and it's a rare opportunity to meet you today, so I hope you can agree to my presumptuous request. You want to compare notes with Senior Ling? Immortal Toya was startled. This was a man who could crush an ancient magic sword with his bare hands. Let's forget about sparring. I know that if it's a competition of raw strength, then I'll lose. I definitely can't beat Senior Ling. Therefore, I hope that Senior can stand still and let me punch you. I want to test how powerful the godly thunder inheritance can be at its fullest. Dharmaraja nodded, looking very confident. Chapter 197. Dharmaraja's confidence wasn't without reason. Not only was a punch infused with the holy relic godly thunder inheritance extremely destructive, the most important thing was that once the godly thunder entered the body, it would immediately numb the nerves. If you didn't take any precautions and took the power of the godly thunder head-on, very few people would be able to stand up to it. Of course, Dharmaraja's overall strength wasn't strong, but because of the godly thunder inheritance, he couldn't be too careless. Back then, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been so overconfident that he had been bedridden for 2 whole days after taking a punch. The last time I challenged Senior Immortal, I only used 60% of the godly thunder inheritance's power. I've long heard of Ling Jinren's strength, so I've long since thought about this challenge. In the office, Dharmaraja bowed to Wang Ling again with an extremely sincere look in his eyes. You want Senior Ling to be a target to test the power of the godly thunder? Hearing this, Immortal Toya already understood. This holy relic was confirmed to have been passed down to me 300 years ago, and it took me another 300 years to completely inherit the Thunder Clan's holy relic. Then, I found this job in the Shao family compound. Unfortunately, after all these years, I've never seen with my own eyes how powerful the godly thunder inheritance can be when it's at its full power. Speaking up to this point, Dharmaraja sighed with some regret. As the last descendant of the Thunder Clan, if I could see it with my own eyes in my lifetime, it would also feel like one of my long-cherished wishes had been fulfilled. It feels like one of my long-cherished wishes has been fulfilled. I have no more regrets in this life. Dharmaraja's words caused Wang Ling to sink into deep thought. This wasn't a simple problem for Wang Ling. Taking the initiative to be punched without being able to fight back would be a test of Wang Ling's ability to control the backlash. The grass on the grave of the Shadow Stream killer who had punched him the last time was probably already dozens of meters high, but compared with the last time, there were still some differences. At the very least, the Dao Talisman seal which Wang Ming had made for him was still there, which was a crucial help in controlling the backlash. Now, Wang Ling just had to be careful not to injure Dharmaraja during the fight. So in the end, Wang Ling agreed to Dharmaraja's request. In fact, Wang Ling was curious about the holy relics handed down from the Great Battle Qi era. After all, many of them had already lost their effectiveness. This was because the holy relics were powered by Battle Qi. For example, the Shao clan's heavenly flame was also a kind of holy relic. Due to the lack of battle chi, it could only be used as a firework ornament and a special fire for the Shao clan to roast meat. However, the Thunder clan's godly thunder inheritance had a certain uniqueness. It was a product of absorbing the power of heaven and earth. Especially during thunderstorms, the godly thunder inheritance would automatically replenish its power and increase its power. This was because the Thunder clan's godly thunder inheritance was one of the divine relics that had been successfully preserved. It had completely changed from relying on battle chi to relying on the world's spiritual energy as its source. Due to the change of time and environment, he had completed his own evolution. Since Senior Ling has no objections, then I'll just watch the show. Did Law Kings have a place to fight? You can't use your fists and feet in this office at all, right? Immortal Toya asked. Yes, yes. Dharmaraja nodded quickly. After that, Dharmaraja used the community's special line to find a tourist car and brought the two of them to an empty square. This square is also a scenic area. It's still under maintenance, so outsiders can't enter. Dharmaraja got out of the car and introduced the place to the two of them. This used to be the Shao clan's family arena during the Great Battle Chi era. Speaking up to this point, Dharmaraja pointed to a small black dot 500 meters in front of the square. Wang Ling looked in the direction Dharmaraja was pointing, and realized that the small black dot was actually a black stone stele. It was already cracked and covered in moss, and even the base was wrapped in thick vines. It looked quite ancient. That's a magic testing stele, which the Shao clan used to test their own descendants. It's also something that the Shao family compound is currently heavily protected. It's covered in a protective film and cover to prevent corrosion from the elements over the years, Lightning Dharmaraja explained. Is there no way to repair it with the godly thunder inheritance? Immortal Toya asked. Dharmaraja shook his head helplessly. There's no metal element in this magic testing stele at all. If it's completely made of jade, the power of the godly thunder inheritance won't work. So that was it, Immortal Toya and Wang Ling nodded inwardly. By the time Wang Ling came back to his senses, Immortal Toya had already retreated to one side, leaving the arena completely to Dharmaraja as he cheered Wang Ling on from a distance. Senior Ling, you can do it. Wang Ling and Dharmaraja stood face to face in the middle of the square. Dharmaraja politely gave Wang Ling a 90-degree bow, then raised his head and fixed his eyes on Wang Ling. Then, he put on his goggles. Senior Ling, be careful. His godly thunder inheritance was almost instantaneous. As soon as he said this, there was a crackling sound in his left hand as a lightning flower burst forth, the dazzling electric light truly blinding. Immortal Toya, who was watching from the sidelines, subconsciously shielded his eyes. He only felt that the whole square had turned into a blur as it was completely enveloped in a vast white light. Wang Ling stood opposite Dharmaraja, and when the power of the godly thunder inheritance was instantly released, Wang Ling thought of a move called the Solar Fist. But the light of the godly thunder inheritance was much more blinding than the Solar Fist. But this kind of light was ineffective against the heavenly eye, which had been cultivated to the extreme. Dharmaraja was left-handed, and the power of the godly thunder exploded 7 times on his left hand. From the very beginning, he had raised the power of the holy relic to 70%. Dharmaraja didn't dare directly use the full power, the last time, he had only used 60%, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been bedridden for 2 days. I'm going up. When the power of the godly thunder reached the 7th level, Dharmaraja abruptly strode forward, raised his left fist, and punched Wang Ling in the chest. On the other hand, Wang Ling remained unmoved. This punch was very fierce, and Wang Ling's bangs were blown back. But even though he didn't seem to move, he was in fact doing his utmost to restrain his golden body and suppress the backlash. The lightning, which was mixed with the godly thunder inheritance, struck Wang Ling's chest with unerring accuracy. When the lightning dissipated, Dharmaraja stared at the youngster in front of him in astonishment. It could only be said that this Ling Jinren was stronger than he had imagined. 7 layers of the godly thunder inheritance actually didn't have the slightest effect. A normal person would have already lost all feeling in their legs and been electrocuted to the ground. But the first thing Wang Ling felt when the 7 layers of the godly thunder entered his body wasn't pain or numbness, it was actually a kind of ticklish feeling. Chapter 198. How strong was the 7th layer of the godly thunder inheritance? Wang Ling felt that it definitely wouldn't be a problem for this power to completely paralyze a soul formation cultivator. Of course, the prerequisite for this complete paralysis was that the soul formation cultivator was completely unprepared. In a normal situation, absolutely no one would take Dharmaraja's attack with the godly thunder inheritance on it. This was also the reason why Dharmaraja had yet to witness the full power of the godly thunder inheritance. After the electric shock, Wang Ling actually felt a sense of comfort. Because his body had been at the level of a sage for many years, massaging his acupoints on the outside actually didn't have much effect on him. Instead, the godly thunder inheritance flowed from the inside and stimulated his acupoints, giving him a feeling that was almost comfortable. On the side, Immortal Toya was stupefied. Although he had already expected this result, Ling Jinren actually didn't move a muscle after taking a full blow from the godly thunder inheritance. This was a little too exaggerated. But this result excited Dharmaraja a little. Senior Ling is really amazing, you live up to your reputation. The power of lightning in his left hand exploded out even more fiercely than before, and in that instant, the sound of violent thunder and lightning resounded throughout the whole square. It could only be said that the godly thunder inheritance was worthy of its name, it actually had the power to change nature. The sky above the square had clearly been clear for miles before they had come, but in that moment, dark clouds hovered over the square and gathered continuously. The sky had already changed to a dusky gray, and at the same time, a dense fog rolled out from the center of the square, making it impossible to see the road ahead. Even if Immortal Toya opened his heavenly eye to watch on the side, he could only see 2 vague figures in the fog. When all is said and done, a holy relic is really amazing. Watching the battle, Immortal Toya secretly marveled in his heart. At that moment, a drop of rain fell on the tip of his nose, and gradually, more drops of rain began to fall from the sky above the square. There was a tremendous rumble, and this time, Immortal Toya saw 8 flashes of lightning in that hazy fog. The power of the 8th layer of the godly thunder inheritance was much greater than before. Dharmaraja's powerful punch was accompanied by bursts of lightning as it blasted holes in the square. The bricks were completely charred by the electricity, and some had cracks on them. Immortal Toya could already imagine the mess after the war. Dharmaraja would probably be responsible for repairing all the floor tiles here. He didn't know if there was any metal in these bricks. If Shakyamuni couldn't repair them properly, he would have to pay for them one by one. These bricks that had been passed down from the Great Dochi era could be worth as much as a chicken cup. Standing in the square now, Immortal Toya couldn't help shrinking back as he looked at the broken bricks. Dharmaraja's fist hit Wang Ling's chest again. This time, Wang Ling felt refreshed, as if his conception and governor meridians had been massaged once more. What do you think? Did you succeed? Looking straight ahead, Dharmaraja saw Wang Ling, who had taken the punch head-on, just nod slightly. Whether it was the force or the impact of this punch, it was a lot higher than the 7-fold godly thunder. If the 7-fold divine lightning could paralyze a soul formation cultivator when completely unprepared, then the power of the 8th-fold divine lightning was enough to severely injure a soul formation cultivator. Furthermore, among all the holy relics, the godly thunder inheritance had a more unique attribute to begin with. Once the power of this lightning caused damage to the body, it was almost irreversible, and there was no way to regenerate cells to restore it. In contrast, paralysis of the nerves was the lightest of conditions. Wang Ling twisted his neck. Dharmaraja's jaw dropped as he felt the greatest shock and amazement. What kind of monster was he dealing with? Dharmaraja, why don't you try it with all your might? Immortal Toya couldn't take it anymore. A person who had been hit head-on by the godly thunder inheritance twice in a row actually didn't react at all. This really was the first time this had happened. Dharmaraja looked at the rainbow-colored lightning wrapped around his hand. For the first time, he wondered if the holy relic he had inherited might be fake. Wang Ling stood firmly in the middle of the square and took the initiative to wave at Dharmaraja. Dharmaraja's heart instantly crumbled a little. He had never thought that there would come a day when he would truly be able to use the full power of the godly thunder inheritance. Taking a slight breath, Dharmaraja composed himself as the lightning wrapped around his hand rose sharply again. From ancient times until now, in the records of my clan, no one has ever been able to come out unscathed after being hit by the power of the tenfold divine lightning inheritance. There was a hint of awe in his eyes as he looked at Wang Ling previously. Dharmaraja had only heard about Wang Ling's strength through various channels. Whether this famous senior in the cultivation circle had the rumored strength was actually something he didn't know until he met him for real. But now, Dharmaraja was certain that those rumors about Ling Jinren being a weakling were completely debunked. This senior Ling was really ridiculously strong. With the sound of 10 explosions, the power of the godly thunder inheritance reached a whole new level. In an instant, the weather changed, and the light drizzle from before turned into a torrential downpour. Dharmaraja's left hand was like a lightning dragon, and the moment it charged forward, the tiles on the ground instantly broke and turned to dust, leaving a gully more than 10 meters long in its wake. Even from more than 10 meters away, the powerful pressure was already transmitted to Wang Ling's face, making him tremble. The power of the full power of the godly thunder inheritance finally made Wang Ling's eyes darken. He really did feel a destructive force invading him. If the one who had unleashed the power of the godly thunder inheritance was that old devil who controlled the stone ghost mask, Wang Ling felt that the world might be plunged into eternal damnation. This was Dharmaraja's most powerful blow. Wang Ling felt that since he was a child, he had never seen anyone punch with such power, and his chest felt a stabbing pain from the weight of it. Unfortunately, Dharmaraja's movements were too slow, and Wang Ling could see every move he made. When Dharmaraja was only half a body's length away from Wang Ling slowly raised his hand to accurately catch Dharmaraja's violent punch, and his 5 fingers closed around Dharmaraja's fist. Instantly, the lightning dragon in Dharmaraja's hand calmed down, and at the same time, a tremendous backlash swept over them. Wang Ling's body glowed with golden light, and before the backlash could be fully unleashed, it enveloped Dharmaraja and Immortal Toya. Then, powerful spiritual pressure spread out in all directions with Wang Ling as the center. A few seconds later, billions of raindrops were swept away by the waves of Wang Ling's backlash, and the clouds parted as tranquility returned. Sunlight shone through the gaps in the clouds again, and Immortal Toya opened his eyes to see Wang Ling's 5 fingers closing around Dharmaraja's fist. Chapter 199. The sky above the square was now cloudless for thousands of miles. Dharmaraja took off his goggles and casually threw them to the ground. His forehead was drenched in sweat as he braced his hands on his knees and gasped for breath. After these 3 punches, Dharmaraja thoroughly understood one thing: the gap between him and Ling Jinren's strength was too great, and this gap could no longer be described as a ditch. There was clearly a vast ocean between him and Ling Jinren. There was a good saying, "Your Jinren is your Jinren, your grandpa is your grandpa." Dharmaraja was thoroughly convinced. Senior Ling is really too strong. I lose. He couldn't help sighing. The gap between him and Ling Jinren really wasn't small at all. Dharmaraja's explosive strength had already been raised to the limit by the 10th layer godly thunder inheritance, and the destructive pressure made Immortal Toya blush with shame. On the side, Immortal Toya hadn't been able to clearly see Dharmaraja's movements at all. In the end, for some reason, Ling Jinren had been able to withstand this punch just like that. Furthermore, Ling Jinren had only raised his hand lightly to instantly neutralize this biting cold attack. Dharmaraja thoroughly admitted defeat. When he came back to his senses, he realized that Immortal Toya was enveloped in a faint and hazy golden light, like a divine garment. This is... Before you punched, Senior Ling covered us with the protective golden light of a sage body, Immortal Toya explained. He had been watching the fight on the side just now, and had seen it very clearly. Otherwise, given the impact of your punch just now, I'm afraid you wouldn't even have been able to break Senior Ling's golden body, and would have been turned into slag by the backlash." Hearing this, Dharmaraja was actually a little moved. This legendary Senior Ling wasn't just powerful, he was actually so considerate, he was simply a warm man. Dharmaraja couldn't help feeling a surge of emotions. If he was a girl, he might fall in love with this Senior Ling, right? "You've already fought, so you should be satisfied now, right?" Immortal Toya folded his arms as he looked at Dharmaraja, as if he was watching a good show. Dharmaraja nodded and said, "Rest assured, Senior Ling and Brother Tu, since I've promised, leave the repair of the magic sword to me. After I go back, I'll work overtime to repair it." Immortal Toya looked at the ruined square and sighed. "By the way, Dharmaraja, is it really okay for you to destroy this place like this? Anyway, it's not open yet. I'll be able to fix these things soon." Speaking up to this point, Dharmaraja's gaze focused on Immortal Toya again with a complicated look in his eyes. He sighed. "I really envy you, Brother Tu." Immortal Toya. Lightning Dharmaraja, "I've always thought that you were the most good-looking person in our chat group, but after seeing Senior Ling today, I realized that he's also very good-looking. The most important thing is that Senior Ling's boyfriend power is off the charts. When he fought me, he even wanted to use his golden light shield to protect you." Immortal Toya, Dharmaraja patted Immortal Toya on the shoulder and sighed deeply. "I wish you happiness." Wang Ling, facts had proven that when two good-looking boys stood together, it would indeed cause some unnecessary misunderstandings. Wang Ling himself felt that his current looks could only be considered average. To put it bluntly, it was just passable, but this could still be considered handsome. Wang Ling now really didn't understand the current aesthetic standards. It was only later that Wang Ling realized a serious problem. In fact, the main reason for Dharmaraja's misunderstanding wasn't Wang Ling, but Immortal Toya. This was the legendary, passable, principle. If your looks were average, and you were with a good-looking person, then your looks would automatically go up a notch. This was similar to the principle of a mirror. Experts had once said that when a person saw their reflection in a mirror, they looked 30% better than normal. This was all an illusion created by the brain. That's right, it was an illusion. No matter what other people thought, Wang Ling was already convinced of this theory in his heart. For the time being, he didn't have to worry about repairing the magic swords. Even so, these days hadn't calmed down. The hawthorn tree on grenade-throwing side was about to break out of the ground, and whether or not the owner of the stone ghost mask would show up was a big problem. That old devil hiding somewhere was another big problem. The problem Wang Ling had to face next week was the joint military training. 2 of the 6 universities would form an alliance to conduct a survival-related military training exercise, which was absolutely unprecedented in history. If it was just a spring outing or an autumn outing, Wang Ling could find all sorts of reasons to decline it. However, activities like military training and learning about agriculture were policies that Secretary Dakang of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had set down decades ago. Every student had to experience it, and these scores would be added to their college entrance examination scores, which were also the key criteria for whether or not they could graduate. In short, this was an option that Wang Ling couldn't avoid. When that time came, there would definitely be too many eyes. When the time came, all the teachers and students of the 3 major alliances and the 6 schools would be there. Wang Ling felt that it would be very difficult to get through this military survival training exercise in a low-key manner in such a situation. Elsewhere, the old devil, who had gone into hiding in his small world, was also plotting a series of troublemaking actions with the master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiyue. If you want to defeat that killer Taoist, you have to recover your realm first. This isn't too urgent for the time being. The flow of time in this small world is different. My venerable self brought you here in the hope that you can recover faster. Then, after I fulfill my promise to you, my venerable self will be able to carry out my grand plan. Thanks to Lord Devil Emperor, I indeed feel a lot more comfortable cultivating here than in the outside world. Jiang Luiyue nodded. After these 2 days, Jiang Luiyue and the old devil had reached a further consensus. Your recovery is one thing, but I also have to entrust you with another. Staying in your body isn't a long-term solution, so I'm going to create a body now. I've already found the raw materials. It's the skeleton of an ancient almighty, the old devil said as he narrowed his eyes. Lord Devil Emperor wants to use this as a foundation to regenerate a body. Can it be done? Jiang Luyue asked. The principle is similar to using spirit lotus roots to create a body in the outside world, but it's more complicated and more advanced. I need the vitality of tens of thousands of young people, and I'll use this as a driving force in conjunction with a great magic array to restore part of that skeleton's body. Don't worry, Lord Devil Emperor. When you mentioned vitality to me last time, I already thought of it. Jiang Luyue nodded. A school that I mentioned to Lord Devil Emperor before is about to join forces with the other 5 schools for military training. When the time comes, there will be tens of thousands of people. Aren't those foundation establishment students ready-made vitality? After saying this, Jiang Luyue smiled coldly, feeling that she was really too quick-witted. She had once said that she would massacre number 60 high school, leaving no one alive. Chapter 200. Devil Emperor Gua Pai felt that the information Jiang Luyue had provided was very valuable. There were a lot of limitations to relying on the activation of a restriction array to make an ancient almighty skeleton regrow its internal organs and flesh. In addition to the need for tens of thousands of vital qi to be used as the energy source to activate the restriction array, there was another crucial condition, which was that these vital qi had to be absorbed at the same time the moment the array was activated. Thus, this was an excellent opportunity. The old devil had been having a headache over this matter before. But now, it had finally been resolved. Jiang Luyue pursed her lips. No matter what, Lord Devil Emperor, you still have to be careful. After all, that killer Taoist is already a sage body. A sage body? That's impossible. My venerable self's body was actually just a little short of becoming a sage body back then. As long as that body can be restored, with a little more tempering, it will also be able to cultivate a sage body. When that time comes, who in this world will be able to stop me? Above the boundary pillar, the old devil in the stone ghost mask sneered. I let that junior take advantage of me earlier. But it doesn't matter, everything is under my control. Speaking of which, do you have any information on the 3 auspicious treasures that I asked you to look out for before? The golden canopy rope isn't here yet. Jiang Luyue shook her head. But I heard that the 7 stars sword has already fallen into the hands of that great death-courting senior. Back in that convenience store, the alchemist who came to collect the souls of those delivery workers was one of his subordinates. We need to pay more attention to this matter. The old devil nodded. In his heart, he was planning to collect the 3 auspicious treasures. Back when Immortal Zhenyuan had asked the world to search for these 3 treasures, no one had ever been able to successfully collect them. The truth was that the purple gold gourd had always been in his possession. As long as he could collect the remaining 2, the old devil would be able to see that Immortal Zhenyuan's face with his own eyes. What on earth did the legendary Immortal Zhenyuan look like? This was something that the old devil was more curious about. Speaking of which, it had been several days since Bandit Evil had received his Shifu Old Antique's order to look for his eldest senior brother. He didn't know if it was because his senior brother's personality had changed, but Bandit Evil always felt that his senior brother had become more mysterious than before. In the past, as long as he hung the floral underwear outside, his senior brother would come to his door in a few days. But now, Bandit Evil felt that flower underpants was no longer his senior brother's weakness. Because Killer Taoist's whereabouts were uncertain, it took Bandit Evil several days to find the nearest place where his senior brother stayed. There was an old district in Jinghua which had been built when Huaxiu Nation had just been founded, and it was filled with large tube-shaped apartment buildings. On this day, a tall young man in black long-sleeved jeans appeared in front of an old tube-shaped apartment. The young man wore a black cap that covered his white hair. There was a saying that the experts were among the people, and this saying was not false at all. Looking at the shabby tube-shaped apartment in front of him, the young man felt nostalgic. Back then, he and his senior brother had been selected from this apartment, and then followed Shifu to cultivate. They were orphans and had no relatives. Who knew that so many years had passed in the blink of an eye? Standing in front of the apartment, the young man felt a little emotional in his heart. After entering the tube-shaped apartment, the young man saw the daily life of the residents here. Most of the residents in the tube-shaped apartment were poor people, not cultivators. But according to Huaxiao Nation's surveys over the years, the happiness index of these people in the apartment buildings was the highest, even far higher than that of cultivators who lived in luxury villa areas. One had to know that many cultivators were people who squandered money like dirt and regarded money as dirt. Immortal Toya and Third Saint, for example, would buy houses and buildings at the drop of a hat, and spend tens of thousands of gold coins with the flick of a finger. However, the vast majority of cultivators would feel empty and anxious, especially when they reached a bottleneck in their realms, and this anxiety would become even more pronounced. After searching the apartment with his spiritual senses for a while, the young man finally sensed a familiar aura in the 100-herb garden behind the apartment. The young man smiled and walked closer. From afar, he could see that there was an old wooden square at the end of the small path in the 100-herb garden. The horizontal board above the square was already cracked, and from the indistinct green ink, he could see the words, "Old Man," written on it. This was a public library, and all the residents in the nearby apartment buildings could borrow books. A middle-aged man with balding hair and several scars on his scalp was sitting in front of the door. He was leaning back in a bamboo chair and reading a newspaper. When he arrived in front of the study, he saw that the man was picking at his feet. The young man pretended not to know as he lowered his head and slowly approached, instantly concealing his aura. Swoosh! A silver needle as fine as gossamer shot out of the young man's fingertips as he passed by the middle-aged man. After a few seconds of silence, the middle-aged man in the bamboo chair put down the newspaper with a silver needle in his mouth. "Junior brother. I haven't seen you for a long time. Has your strength regressed again?" The middle-aged man didn't speak and relied on ventriloquism to speak. The young man pointed at his feet, and the middle-aged man instantly understood. He looked at his feet and found that his pair of flip-flops had disappeared. When he looked back, they were in the young man's hands. Both of them immediately laughed. "Junior brother, your finger strength has regressed a lot, but your hands-on skills have improved a lot." Killer Taoist smiled and got up from the bamboo chair barefoot. He stared at the young man in front of him. "Why are you looking for me?" "Master entrusted us with something, and I've been looking for you for a few days. I didn't expect you to be reading here. My personal spy is an administrator here, and he's been helping me spy for information. That's why I've been watching over him for the past 2 days," Killer Taoist said. "Bandit Evil, what information?" "Killer Taoist, I found that someone has been pretending to be me." "Bandit Evil, Killer Taoist, I've been aware of this for a long time, but I've been looking for clues. That kid pretending to be me is quite skilled. I can't find any clues. The disappearance of the delivery man 2 days ago was said to be investigated by someone pretending to be me. I hope I don't catch this imposter." "Bandit Evil, speaking of which, senior brother, are you immune to floral underwear now? Previously, as long as the underwear was hung on the drying rack, you would appear." "Hee, master, do you really think you can threaten me with underwear forever? As a top assassin, I've long overcome this weakness." Killer Taoist smiled faintly and pulled down his pants. Hee. "See? Now, I choose not to wear it." Chapter 201. In some sense, Killer Taoist and Wang Ming were actually quite similar in that they both liked to challenge their limits. Wang Ming was keen on challenging our Ling Jinren, while Killer Taoist was keen on challenging his own Shifu, Old Antique. The reason why the two of them were similar was because they had one thing in common: neither of them had ever won. Looking at his senior brother in front of him, Bandit Evil was so frightened that he couldn't even keep his flip-flops on as he covered his eyes, which were about to go blind. He was just an innocent little virgin, why did he have to let his eyes experience such an eyesore? "Shifu, Hurry and save me, there's a pervert here. And it's your eldest disciple. Killer Taoist put on his flip-flops again and proudly pulled up his pants, without the slightest hint of remorse for corrupting the sex culture. Junior brother, do you know, I've been looking for a way to defeat Shifu all this time. After all these years of searching, I've finally found the reason why I've repeatedly lost to Shifu. Bandit Evil raised his head, ? Killer Taoist, it's because of these floral underpants that are blocking my way forward. Bandit Evil, Killer Taoist, as a top killer, how can I be defeated by this little hobby? So putting on a neutral position is the best way I can think of. Bandit Evil, Killer Taoist, by the way, why is Shifu looking for us? Bandit Evil, it's the students at Shifu's current school. Now that the whereabouts of the master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luyue, are unknown, Shifu is worried that this person will organize killers to come to the school for revenge. If those people really want to make a move, they'll definitely do it quietly. Shifu is very worried that the children will be plotted against. Hearing this, Killer Taoist nodded. So, Shifu wants us to give them a warning? Bandit Evil nodded. That would be best. Shifu has already retired behind the scenes for 100 years, and doesn't want outsiders to disturb his peace. Killer Taoist lowered his head and his eyes darkened. I understand. He took off one of his flip-flops and pulled out a fuse from the crack in the heel of the slipper. Killer Taoist grabbed the end of the fuse and yanked it. Suddenly, there was a whoosh, and a cluster of red flames shot up into the sky, one cloud-piercing arrow and a magnificent army. Bandit Evil was surprised. When did senior brother gather so many subordinates? True experts usually have hidden guards around them. Previously, I had a sudden impulse and recruited 2 of them. Killer Taoist rubbed his nose. Just as he finished speaking, Bandit Evil suddenly saw 2 figures descend from the sky. They were 2 men dressed in black and their faces were masked. They looked very mysterious. Bandit Evil, only 2. That's right. Killer Taoist nodded and then turned to the masked man who had suddenly landed and introduced, these 2 are codenamed 1,000 Army and 10,000 Horses. These are the 2 subordinates I've just recruited. Let's just treat them as apprentices. I'll send them to the circle later to warn everyone. Come, quickly greet your second martial uncle. The 2 men cupped their fists at Bandit Evil. Hello, second martial uncle. Bandit Evil was speechless for a very long time. He realized that there was simply something wrong with his senior brother's brain. The 6 schools' joint military training this time wasn't a small matter. Rather than saying it was a coincidence that several key city high schools and key candidate high schools would be training together, it would be better to say that it had been planned beforehand and had been deliberately arranged together. Everyone knew that number 59 high school and number 60 high school were key candidate high schools. Now that these 2 schools had joined forces to confront the other 4 key city high schools, it was a big gimmick. Number 60 high school's headmaster Chen and number 59 high school's headmaster Jean were from the same sect, and both of them were very concerned about face. Given their personalities, when fellow apprentices got together, their top priority was to do everything they could to stir up trouble. It was June 13th on Monday in the 8th week of the semester. As soon as Teacher Pan entered the classroom early in the morning, she started to talk about the precautions for the joint military training this time. Headmaster Chen and Headmaster Jean worked overnight to devise a strategy for the survival drill for the military training this time, and asked all teachers in charge to popularize it in their classes. I believe that everyone should have some understanding of the rules. There are more than 10,000 students from the 6 schools this time. At the beginning of the drill, an array will be used to send you to random locations on the map. You may have companions or opponents next to you, but only those who survive in the end will emerge victorious. Teacher Pan pushed up her glasses and said, so when you land, keep your eyes wide open. See clearly whether it's an ally or an enemy, and don't accidentally injure an ally, or your overall score will be deducted. Everyone, Teacher Pan, what I'm telling you now is very important. Don't take it lightly. Do you know that during the college entrance examination, there was a senior who didn't listen carefully when I was talking about these precautions and filled in the wrong answer card? In the end, he had to repeat the course for a year. Everyone, Teacher Pan, also, when you land, magic treasures will randomly appear in the buildings on the map, so you'll need to search for them yourself. After you land, don't look for those messy, useless things. If you have a weapon, pick it up first, and then look for a storage bag. No matter how good your kung fu is, you're still afraid of a kitchen knife, and you won't be able to beat those with magic treasures in close combat. Saying this, Little Peanut raised his hand weakly. Then teacher, what if we happen to be unlucky and don't have any magic treasures? Teacher Pan, do you still have to ask? Do you know how to hide and seek? Little Peanut, there are less than 2,000 students from our school and number 59 high school who are going to the military training this time. If we're unlucky and there aren't any magic treasures to pick up nearby, then find a place to hide. Don't come up and throw your life away. Naturally, it's best if we can stall for time until our allies arrive to send us equipment. We have to do our best to survive, so that we'll have a greater fighting strength in the end. Teacher Pan said solemnly, in short, there's only one word, stay low. Everyone, there are only two ways to win in this type of survival game. Either you're as strong as an old devil and sweep everything away, or you lay low and grow wretchedly. Teacher Pan looked at the students in the class and propped both hands on the dais as she said solemnly, to sum it up in one sentence, stay low, we can win. Wang Ling, that night after returning from school, Wang Ling realized that the images flashing in his mind were becoming more and more obvious. Previously, his heavenly eye had foreseen a man lying in a pool of blood. Now, he was completely certain that this man was grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. And Wang Ling was very sure that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had fallen in the back garden of that villa in Wenxian Garden. Wang Ling was suddenly a little worried about that guy's safety. Chapter 202. Nurtured in the spirit soil and watered with spirit water day and night, the hawthorn seed which grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had obtained from Boss Tan finally sprouted after 10 or so days of hard work. Hands on his hips, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the green hawthorn seedlings with a sense of pride. 10 or so minutes ago, these seedlings had only been the size of soybeans, but now they were already growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It wouldn't be long before the hawthorn fruit was completely ripe. But despite his pride, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was still a little discouraged. Because the little girl who played in the mud that Boss Tan had mentioned had yet to show up. Senior Immortal, will the girl that Boss Tan mentioned really show up? Song Qing-shu, who was dressed in a well-ironed suit, asked the young man in white as he stood behind him. Who knows? The young man pursed his lips and looked a little unhappy. In fact, most people did not have high hopes for this matter in the beginning. Wang Ling had always felt that this matter was pretty unreliable, but there was no shortage of fools in this world. Boss Tan, who had kept this seed for so many years, was one of them, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who believed that the girl would really show up after he planted the hawthorn seedlings, was another. Some people said that the higher a cultivator's cultivation, the more shrewd they would become, to the point that in the end, everyone would become a devil in the eyes of the world. They lacked that so-called romance, but Wang Ling could see that this romance was in fact an important part of a cultivator's Tao heart. Thus, cultivation didn't necessarily have to be about bitterness and hatred, and not every cultivator was as romantic as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Sometimes, Wang Ling felt from the bottom of his heart that it was really good to have such a friend on his path of cultivation. That evening, the street lamps on the side of Wenxian Garden had just come on. A figure suddenly emerged from the space crack under the street lamps. This was a blind spot, and when the figure emerged, the scattered passers-by on the side of the road with their heads down unexpectedly didn't notice him. With the purple gold gourd spatial fog and this GPS positioning system, my venerable self can come and go as I please in this world. In Jiang Liuyue's body, the old devil looked down at his phone and smiled slightly. Originally, when he relied on the purple gold gourd's spatial fog to move, he still needed to come out from the exit first and then rely on his great magic power to lock onto his position. That was a waste of time and spiritual power. But now, it was much more convenient than before. The old devil, is this the location? Yes, Lord Demon Venerable. The person who took the 7-star sword lives here. Jiang Liuyue's voice rang out from the stone ghost mask the old devil was wearing. The old devil, is that a villa estate? Do you know which villa? Jiang Liuyue, the spy I hired earlier reported that there's a hawthorn tree in front of the villa, so it should be very easy to identify. Then let's go in and look for it first. This time, my venerable self must get that 7-star sword. The old devil nodded and said in a deep voice. While the two of them had just started moving, in the backyard of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa in Wenxian Garden, a man in a black cloak was already looking at the hawthorn tree from a distance through the fence. This was an expert with an unknown realm. His aura was completely hidden under the black cloak, making him look extremely mysterious. It's here. The figure under the cloak spoke softly to himself, and then with a light shake of his feet, he flew over the fence with a whoosh and arrived under the hawthorn tree. Standing in front of the hawthorn tree, the man took a deep breath and carefully sniffed the scent of the hawthorn tree. There was no mistaking it. This hawthorn tree had been planted from that tree back then. That tree had been specially processed, and the hawthorn fruit it produced had a special aroma, which could only be detected by someone who had undergone special training. Standing under the hawthorn tree, the man sighed with emotion in his heart, because only 1 in 100 million people could detect this special scent. As one of the 8 children who had been selected back then, he had been one of them. He was the only one who had survived that high-intensity, hellish training, and had been trained to accurately pick out the one with the special scent from a pile of tens of millions of hawthorn fruits. 5 senses, mental cultivation techniques, body movements, martial arts. He hadn't taken any elective courses during that hellish training, and he had cultivated everything related to cultivators to perfection. And all of this was to help Master bring back the person who had planted this special hawthorn tree. Now that he had finally found this hawthorn tree, the cloaked man was so excited that he felt like he was about to collapse. In order to find the person who had planted this hawthorn tree, he had suffered so much. So much suffering. Finally, he had found it. As long as he brought back the person who had planted this fruit to Master, he would be free from now on. All these years, he had lived a really tiring life. Now, standing under the hawthorn tree, if he could, the cloaked man just wanted to shout out 5 words, "I want to retire." After a series of roars in his heart, the cloaked man calmed his thoughts and came back to his senses. The most urgent thing now was to find the person who had planted this hawthorn tree. Just as he raised his head, an unfamiliar aura suddenly appeared behind him, catching him off guard. The old devil had actually directly passed through the space crack and arrived in the backyard. He had moved so quickly that for a moment, the cloaked man actually didn't see clearly how the other party had appeared. The moment their eyes met, the old devil and the cloaked man came to a conclusion almost at the same time. This person was definitely the person who had planted the hawthorn tree. This person was definitely the junior who had taken the 7-star sword. Furthermore, the moment he saw Jiang Liuyue appear, the cloaked man actually had the confidence that he had found the right person. He had long known that Master was lustful, but he hadn't expected him to actually like this. He felt that the 2 lumps of mass destruction on the chest of the woman in front of him were a little exaggerated. Hands behind his back, the cloaked man stared at the old devil in front of him and said, "My master wants to see you, please come with me." "And who are you?" This time, it was the old devil's turn to be astonished. Were all juniors this arrogant nowadays? Using Jiang Liuyue's body, the old devil started to carefully size up the cloaked man in front of him. What surprised him was that this person's aura was actually very well hidden. Given Jiang Liuyue's current state of recovery, he actually couldn't detect it. "I know, that junior must have known that I was coming to steal the sword, so he was already on guard." "Did that junior send you?" the old devil guessed as he stared at the cloaked man. "Junior." The cloaked man was startled. There weren't many people who dared call Master Junior. This woman was most likely not easy to deal with. But what the hell was that sword? The cloaked man frowned as he pondered. After some thought, the cloaked man actually made the first move, raising his hand to grab the old devil. Who cared what that sword was? He had to strike first, knock the person unconscious and bring him back first. In the villa, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Song Qing-shu, who were in the middle of a small meeting, were alarmed by the noise outside. Both of them stretched out their spiritual senses, and in the end, were stupefied. Chapter 203. After the hawthorn tree had grown, that legendary girl hadn't shown up, so grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Song Qing-shu had returned to the villa to discuss the follow-up insurance claims for the 20-odd delivery rider ghosts. When they came back to their senses, they were horrified to find that two people had inexplicably appeared outside the door. Senior Immortal, what do we do now? At some point, Song Qing-shu had already taken off his suit and quickly changed into a pair of long johns. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Let's wait and see. Judging from his intuition, he could tell that both of them were top-notch experts. Regardless of whether it was the woman with a rather voluptuous upper body or the cloaked man whose face couldn't be seen clearly, the two of them actually didn't make the slightest sound as they fought. When they trembled together, they even turned into two balls of light entangled with each other. They're both experts. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened the curtains, leaving a crack so that he could secretly observe what was going on outside the window. These two people actually hide their auras so well. If it wasn't for the slight movement when they fought just now, Senior Immortal and I might not have sensed them. Song Qing-shu couldn't help exclaiming in admiration. That cloaked man in particular was really terrifying. To be able to fight without the slightest bit of aura or even make a sound, someone who could do this had to be close to the creation of celestial beings in terms of silent combat and aura-concealing spells. To reach this peak level, one had to cultivate these two spells from a young age. Since ancient times, professional killers and intelligence agents had been the most common people to be proficient in these two spells. At that moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was deep in thought as he observed through the crack in the curtains. It could only be said that as the owner of the cultivation forum and a veteran of the cultivation world for many years, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in the end grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Just by relying on the habits of the two in battle, he was able to guess their specific identities. First of all, the tall cloaked man's hands never left his sleeves during the fight, which was a sign that he habitually used hidden weapons. The most crucial point was that the cloaked man's techniques were clearly more vicious, and every move he made was aimed at vital points. It could be said that this was the instinct of an experienced killer or intelligence agent. However, the woman's methods were not weak either. Even though her attacks were not as vicious as the man's, both her movements and her positioning were very strange. He could even keenly detect attacks from blind spots that he couldn't see and dodge them. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's first instinct was that this woman's combat experience was so rich that it wasn't something someone at her realm could display. Moreover, he felt that this woman was very familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. At that moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very vexed. What to do? After thinking for a moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took out his phone, recorded the scene, and sent it to Wang Ling. And the scene recorded in the video was completely two rays of light colliding with each other. If it was just a photo, he probably wouldn't even be able to capture a shadow. But with the video recording function, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal firmly believed that given that cultivation forum gangster's eyesight, Wang Ling would definitely be able to see it. At that moment, after more than 10 minutes of fighting, the two of them finally stopped their follow-up attacks at the same time and stared at each other deeply. As expected of someone Master has taken a liking to. Apart from me, there are very few people nowadays who can cultivate silent combat and aura-hiding spells to this level. The cloaked man folded his arms and stared fixedly at the old devil. The old devil rested his hands on his knees and gasped for breath. In the end, Jiang Liuyue's realm hadn't fully recovered, and he wasn't used to controlling this body. He had consumed too much spirit energy in the fight, and he also had to keep an eye on the center of gravity of those two lumps in front of his chest. The old devil had suffered greatly in this fierce exchange of blows. If it wasn't for his rich combat experience, he would have already died 800 times under the cloaked man's continuous attacks just now. Staring at the cloaked man in front of him, the old devil was actually a little frightened in his heart. He hadn't been out for long. How had he already run into two juniors with such abnormal strength? There was still a limit to how long he could fuse with his body. It would take at least another 8 hours for him to be able to possess another body again. The old devil felt that if he continued to tangle with them like this, the situation would only get worse for him. He stared at the cloaked man in front of him and started to negotiate. "Little brother, is there some misunderstanding between us?" The cloaked man cupped his chin. "Misunderstanding? Then why are you here?" The old devil: "I followed the hawthorn tree here to look for someone." The cloaked man: "What a coincidence, I was also ordered to look for someone under the hawthorn tree." The old devil: "Don't worry, our master said that if we can bring them back alive, we'll do our best to do so." Under the cloak, the young man bared his snow-white teeth. Spirit light flashed in his right hand as he summoned a blood-red spirit sword. "Miss, if you come back with me obediently, I guarantee that you won't be hurt. Given your nascent soul strength, don't struggle. But if you continue to resist, I don't mind cutting you up on the spot and bringing you back." The old devil was stunned. Not only was this junior freakishly strong, he was also AF*** king psychopath. The old devil: "Little brother, there must be some misunderstanding here. I'm here to seize the sword, seize the sword." The young man's expression suddenly darkened. "My master gave me abyss avoidance when I was very young. How dare you lay your hands on it?" The old devil felt that the situation already couldn't be explained in a few words. He was sure that the person this young man was looking for wasn't him, but reality had proven that he shouldn't have tried to reason with a psychopath. Because of the limitations of his physical body, the old devil had initially wanted to avoid this meaningless fight. But given the current situation, he had to first get rid of this Master Khan retard. "Very well, Junior. You've thoroughly infuriated my venerable self." The old devil gritted his teeth, and with a hum, black chi flowed out of Jiang Liuyu's 7 orifices. A pitch-black cloud was gathering above the old devil's head. This was a demonic fog that cultivators below the soul formation stage couldn't see. This demonic fog was in fact a creature which the old devil had brought out of the gate between worlds back then. After being subdued, he had forcibly kept it as a pet, and raised it little by little using human blood and the souls of the dead. Before the old devil had been sealed in the stone ghost mask back then, this demonic fog creature had already possessed the strength of a void refinement cultivator. Given the limitations of his physical body, this was currently the best and most effective method of attack the old devil could think of. As soon as this demonic fog appeared, a gust of wind instantly surged in the back garden. Observing from inside the villa, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression also changed drastically. "Oh no! Senior Immortal, what's wrong?" Song Qing-shu was also startled by grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's reaction. The man's face was pale as he stared lifelessly in the direction of the back garden. "I haven't saved old Senior Wang's broccoli yet." Chapter 204. Behind the old devil, the demonic mist-like creature condensed into a mighty human-shaped devil spirit which seemed to be wearing a helmet. The devil spirit folded its arms, and then its eyes burst with red light. Under the cloak, the man finally couldn't help frowning. This demonic chi was really too heavy. Although the gate between worlds had been closed for a whole 6 years, there were still a lot of demons scattered all over the world and hidden in the human world. However, the cloaked man had to admit that this was the first time he had seen such a heavy demonic chi. Judging from the previous fight, the young man had thought that this would be a simple task, but the woman in front of him had shown a reaction speed and powerful methods that didn't match her realm. Was this really just a nascent soul cultivator? The young man looked doubtfully at the powerful void refinement devil spirit behind the woman, and was lost in deep thought. He now had every reason to believe that this powerful devil spirit might have been seduced by the woman. Eat him for me. The old devil was furious, and he started to manipulate the giant devil spirit behind him. In a split second, the devil spirit roared and spread its arms. Black fog rolled out, and endless cold energy spread out. With the devil spirit at the center, the ground instantly froze into a thin layer of ice. The young man's gaze was solemn. This cold energy, which had condensed from hell, wasn't ordinary. A cultivator with a low realm would immediately lose the ability to move if they came into contact with it. He retreated several steps and stood guard under the hawthorn tree. Using abyss avoidance in his hand, he drew a circle of light with a radius of 10 feet around the hawthorn tree, within which he retreated. This circle of light gave off a golden light, and the cold energy of hell which spread out from the devil spirit was kept at bay. The manor head had specifically instructed him to protect this hawthorn tree. Bringing the person back and protecting the tree was the mission that the manor head had given him. Standing in the circle of light, the young man pointed his sword at the old devil. If this hawthorn tree is destroyed, it's my loss. As soon as he said this, he stretched out his left hand from under the cloak. In a flash of golden light, his left arm instantly became enormous. This person had actually refined his left arm into a magic weapon. The two people in the room finally knew where this young man had come from. They had seen this scene before. To refine a body part into a magic weapon, this person was definitely from Immortal Mansion. But, why would someone from Immortal Mansion appear here? He had injured Azwa and killed Yu earlier. Had this person been sent by Immortal Mansion to avenge them? Song Qingshu broke out in a cold sweat and looked a little nervous. Senior Immortal, is there any news from Senior Ling? Not yet. Brother Ling should have just finished school at this hour. I'm afraid he hasn't seen the news yet. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's heart was practically bleeding. He could only watch helplessly as the flowers and plants he had planted in his back garden were slowly eroded by the cold air. The most important thing was old Senior Wang's broccoli. Everything was ruined. Another quarter of an hour passed. The two people in the garden were using all their skills, and it was hard to separate them. Even the devil spirit that the old devil had summoned felt tired. This young man in front of him wasn't ***king normal person at all. The Qilin arm in his left hand was really terrifyingly solid. As long as the devil spirit summoned a ghost soldier to bite him, the young man would use the Qilin arm to block it, and not a single trace of blood would be left behind. On the other side, the young man from Immortal Mansion also couldn't attack normally. When all was said and done, this was a void refinement devil spirit. Not only couldn't he get close, even the sword chi that he slashed out was instantly dissolved by the devil chi. Thus, the current situation was like a wrist twister that had been going on for half an hour. Both sides exerted their strength repeatedly, but to no avail. But in this situation, no one dared to relax lightly. The old devil was well aware that even if he summoned the purple gold gourd and borrowed its mist to escape, it still wouldn't work. In the time it took to summon that purple gold mist, the young man's sword chi would instantly close in on her. Given the current state of Jiang Liuyue's body, she wouldn't be able to withstand the sweep of this sword chi at all. The old devil felt very wronged. When had he ever been bullied by a junior in his heyday? He truly felt a little tired. If this stalemate continued, it would only be disadvantageous to him. Brother, how about we call a truce for 10 minutes? No, we have to decide who's the winner today. On Master's orders, I have to take away the person who appeared under the hawthorn tree. No matter what, I have to do it today. As long as I take you back, I can retire. The young man shook his head very stubbornly. The old devil wanted to cry but had no tears. I already said, I'm not the person you're looking for. Whether you are or not, I'll take you back first. If you aren't, at worst I'll just come back and look for you again. As long as it's someone who appeared under the hawthorn tree, I'll take them away. The young man said. Are you ***king sick? The old devil couldn't help swearing. This is Master's order, I can only carry it out. The young man stared at the old devil intently. The sword chi I use with my left hand is 50 times more powerful than with my right hand. It's enough to crush your void refinement devil spirit. You already have no chance of winning. After saying that, the young man took a deep breath, then switched abyss avoidance to his left hand. The moment he gripped his left hand, it was as if that abyss avoidance had been connected to a boundless source of spirit energy. In a split second, it shone with golden light and instantly awakened. The old devil was horrified by the powerful spiritual pressure. This young man's strength was actually above the void refinement stage. He had completely miscalculated. But in his current state, there was no way he could summon a devil spirit more powerful than a void refinement cultivator. From the very beginning, this had been a battle of unequal strength. Inside the house, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned slightly as he looked at the spirit sword in the Immortal Talisman man's hand. Somehow, he felt that it looked a little familiar. This spirit sword wasn't of a low quality, its spirit light was subdued, but its sword chi hadn't weakened in the slightest. At the very least, it was a holy weapon. But now wasn't the time to think about this. Holding the sword in his left hand, the cloaked young man had already slashed out with sword chi, and a tremendous sword power accompanied by a powerful wind pressure swept the whole area. That domineering golden sword chi turned into a crescent moon that was more than 10 meters long, which slashed at the devil spirit with almost unstoppable momentum. In that instant, both grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Song Qing-shu were alarmed at the same time. The range of this sword chi was too wide, and almost everything in front of the young man was instantly turned to flying ash. Because the golden crescent moon was so wide, part of it had already entered grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa, and the walls were slowly torn apart. Not good. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was alarmed. At this rate, this sword chi would definitely cut him and Song Qing-shu in half. Senior Immortal, run. Song Qing-shu pushed grenade-throwing Senior Immortal away. But even so, it was already too late. This sword chi was closing in so quickly that even the heavenly eye couldn't see it clearly. But at that moment, a figure had appeared in the back garden at some point. Who is it? The young man from Immortal Talisman raised his eyes and saw a youngster in big white bunny pajamas appear in front of him at some point. In the face of this turbulent golden crescent moon, the youngster just stretched out his hand lazily and raised a finger. Chapter 205. Everyone felt suffocated at this scene. The golden crescent had actually been blocked. Furthermore, he had only used one index finger, and that violent sword chi had been stuck in place, unable to advance another half an inch. To be honest, Wang Ling felt that he had arrived just in time. If he had been a few seconds later, grenade-throwing and Song Qing-shu would have been cut down along with the house by this crescent sword chi. At this moment, everyone fell silent. Wang Ling blocked this golden crescent and at the same time sensed the energy contained in this sword chi. This young man was very strong, even stronger than the old devil's void refinement devil spirit, and was different from the cultivators Wang Ling had met before. Let's break down the sword chi first. Although he had blocked this sword chi, Wang Ling felt that it was like an unstable nuclear warhead, which made him uneasy. He raised his thumb and rubbed it with his index finger, and the golden crescent instantly broke down into golden powder which dissipated into the air. This scene couldn't help but remind people of the lyrics of a song, "You gently twist the tip of your finger, and crush me." Everything was so simple and natural. The old devil stared at Wang Ling. Although he could only see the back of this person, who was wearing big white bunny pajamas that were in stark contrast to his strength, the old devil would recognize him even if he were reduced to ashes. This was definitely the junior who had broken his ancient magic sword at the entrance of the convenience store. Who are you? The young man from Immortal Talisman stared at Wang Ling, a few drops of cold sweat running down his forehead. His gaze was a little incredulous. The sword chi, which was 50 times more powerful, had actually been blocked by a single finger and then easily broken down. Wang Ling didn't answer, and only turned his head slightly to look behind him out of the corner of his eye. Both the old devil and the devil spirit couldn't help shivering. That look, if they stayed here any longer, they would definitely die. Sorry, my venerable self will be leaving first, the old devil broke out in a cold sweat. As soon as he said this, the purple gold mist from earlier rose up and then directly disappeared without a trace. For the old devil, this was definitely a painful decision. Ever since he was recognized as the demon lord by the world, he rarely put down his pride and did things that were completely shameful. It could be said that the old devil's escape had been completely within Wang Ling's expectations. Before the ancient magic sword was officially repaired, there was no way the purple gold gourd's protective fog would be able to track the old devil's small world. But Wang Ling knew that this old devil's days wouldn't be too far off. That gaze from before was a warning. Just like that, the old devil left. This devil Emperor Gua Pai, who was feared by the world, also had his own weakness, and that weakness was Wang Ling. When it came to his life and face, the old devil decisively put aside his dignity and integrity. He waved his sleeves and did not take away a single cloud. Unfortunately, this young man from Immortal Mansion still didn't realize the seriousness of the problem. No matter who you are, if you dare to obstruct Immortal Mansion, your crime is unforgivable, the young man from Immortal Mansion said coldly as he looked at Wang Ling. Pa. It was as if the spirit sword in his hand had been given a soul, and in the blink of an eye, it sped behind Wang Ling at top speed. This was a sword technique that could take the head of an enemy general from 1,000 li away. When the young man used this sword technique, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he looked very confident. This was the move he was most familiar with among all the sword techniques he knew, and it was all about subduing the enemy in one move and killing them in one blow. Wang Ling had just turned his head when the blood-colored spirit sword in the young man's hand had already flown out. This sword was so fast that even a soul formation cultivator might not be able to catch it. Its sword chi was completely golden, like a bolt of lightning. Looking at this scene, grenade-throwing senior immortal seemed to suddenly remember something, and his eyes widened. This person said earlier that this sword is called Abyss Avoidance. Song Qing Shu, senior immortal, what did you remember? Grenade-throwing senior immortal, I remember a legendary ancient magic sword, also called Abyss Avoidance. Its speed is at the top of the historical cultivation list of swords, and it's nicknamed Golden Flash. Its brother sword, codenamed Silver Lightning, ranks second on the list of swords in terms of speed. Hearing this, Song Qingshu couldn't help trembling. A young man from Immortal Mansion who was holding a legendary ancient magic sword in his hand. How much power was behind this Immortal Mansion? It really made one's imagination run wild. However, although Song Qingshu felt a little scared, he didn't feel any fear at all. For some reason, Ling Zhenren gave him a great sense of security every time he appeared, especially when he appeared in those big white bunny pajamas, which made Song Qingshu feel a trace of warmth and familiarity. Die. In the field, the young man from Immortal Mansion sneered the moment Abyss Avoidance shot out. At the same time, Grenade Throwing and Song Qingshu, who were hiding behind a wall in the villa, couldn't help sighing. Nowadays, why were there so many people who liked to court death? Wang Ling's eyes followed the trajectory of the sword as it sped toward him. At the same time, he thought in his heart, if it was grenade-throwing senior immortal standing here right now, there would probably be no suspense in this battle. Whoosh! While he was thinking, the sword had already come at him from a strange angle, and was about to stab him in the back. Wang Ling just turned to the side and dodged it. At the same time, he grabbed the hilt of the blood-colored spirit sword firmly in his hand. The young man from Immortal Mansion's eyes widened. He felt like his view of the world had been refreshed, and he was being struck by lightning. How was this possible? This was Golden Flash, the legendary ancient magic sword that ranked first in speed on the historical ranking list of cultivation swords. The young man from Immortal Mansion was stupefied. To actually be able to block Abyss Avoidance's killing blow, how ***king fast was this person's hand speed? How many years did it take to be single? The young man gritted his teeth and silently recited the sword art again to summon Abyss Avoidance back. However, no matter how he cast the spell, Abyss Avoidance didn't budge in the youngster's hand at all. He instantly understood that it wasn't that his spell had failed, but that this youngster had an unimaginably monstrous strength. What kind of divine being was this? Behind the half-destroyed villa wall, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Song Qingshu had already expected this scene, and both of them couldn't help sighing. Senior Immortal, you said earlier that this golden flash is called Abyss Avoidance. Do you know the real name of the second fastest silver lightning, Senior Immortal? Song Qingshu was very curious and couldn't help asking. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, oh, you mean that silver lightning? Song Qingshu nodded. It's called Pool Avoidance, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied without hesitation. Chapter 206. Wang Ling felt that it had been quite dangerous for him to arrive at this point in time. If he had been a few seconds later, the Heavenly Eye's prediction would have come true, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would have collapsed in a puddle of ketchup. Now that the young man from Immortal Mansion's contract spirit sword, Abyss Avoidance, had been snatched away, Wang Ling could immediately tell that this magic sword wasn't ordinary. In terms of overall fighting strength, this magic sword was stronger than the dagger that he had broken from the old devil 2 days ago. Furthermore, it indeed moved at an astonishing speed. When he had caught the old devil's ancient magic sword with his bare hands earlier, Wang Ling hadn't used his heavenly eye to track the sword's movements. This time, however, he had no choice but to use it. It could only be said that Golden Flash was worthy of its name. Any sword that could be listed on the historical cultivation sword list was by no means ordinary. But unfortunately, it had run into Wang Ling, the battle had been unexpectedly disrupted, the woman he had sworn to bring back had run away, and even his spirit sword had been snatched away. The young man from Immortal Mansion looked a little disheartened at that moment. The young man took off the hood of his cloak to reveal short, dazzling red hair. His forehead was beaded with sweat, and he looked a little tired. Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal both noticed a red dot the size of a grain of rice on the young man's forehead. They immediately realized that this young man had a spirit contract. This was a method used by ancient sects to bind their disciples. Binding souls was to ensure that the sect's disciples would never betray them. Actually, this method still existed, but in order to ensure legality, light sects would sign a sect labor contract when they accepted disciples, which would bind them for a period of 50 years. They wouldn't use souls to threaten their disciples. Thus, signing a spirit contract was actually illegal nowadays. However, this was the style of the dark forces. Over the years, Huaxiao Nation had invested a lot of money in cracking down on dark forces that didn't have a legal license to operate, and the crackdown on pornography was comparable to that on drugs. However, the dark forces that were reported in the news to have been wiped out by the government in one fell swoop actually weren't that big. In the past, they wouldn't even be considered a prefecture-level sect, and would at most be a small gang. But after several exchanges with Immortal Mansion this time, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had a hunch that this dark force was definitely a big fish, and might even be involved in a lot of shady business and profit chains. Wang Ling fixed his gaze on the young man. He didn't make a move, but the atmosphere made the young man especially nervous. To be able to easily break through his crescent moon sword chi that was 50 times stronger than before, and even catch the golden flash. This was enough to prove that the realm of this youth in white bunny pajamas and himself was not on the same level. The young man retreated into the golden circle he had drawn and used his body to shield the hawthorn tree behind him. At the same time, he stared fixedly at Wang Ling and smiled provocatively. Even if you take Abyss Avoidance, you won't get its heart. Abyss Avoidance was ranked first on the sword leaderboard in terms of speed, and its loyalty was extremely high. Even if I have to self-destruct, I will never betray Master. Wang Ling nodded to himself. He didn't even need to make a hand seal, he just called out softly in his heart, and a brown spirit light instantly appeared in his hand. After that, the spiritual light dissipated and turned into a brown spirit sword. In the distance, the young man from Immortal Mansion narrowed his eyes before he could see it clearly. He was immediately stunned by what he saw. This powerful youngster's sword was actually a peachwood sword. Wang Ling was silent as he stacked Jinka and Abyss Avoidance together. Instantly, the young man from Immortal Mansion felt dizzy as if something had hammered his skull. When he came back to his senses, he was shocked to realize that his connection with abyss avoidance had actually been severed. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The young man raised his eyes and stared at Wang Ling. What did you do to abyss avoidance? Until now, the young man from Immortal Mansion still didn't understand what on earth had happened, but grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the side did. You're wrong, it wasn't my brother who did anything to your sword, it was his Jinka who did something to your sword, Jing. Cool. Was that the name of that peachwood sword? The young man's eyes widened, the shock on his face unabated. I've never heard of this sword on the historical cultivation leaderboard, nonsense. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal chuckled. My brother's father bought this sword from a flower and bird market back then. The young man from Immortal Mansion felt like his three views had been refreshed. Shocked, isn't it? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the young man and spread his hands. When I heard the news back then, I was actually also very shocked. But that's the truth. Actually, there's nothing unreasonable about it. Think about it, how many big shots in cultivation history were able to pick up ancient secret manuals and treasures on a random street? Sometimes, this kind of thing also depends on immortal fate. What you're saying doesn't make sense at all. The young man from Immortal Mansion wanted to flip the table, and he almost roared in anger. That's just a peachwood sword from a rundown place, how could my abyss avoidance change owners so easily? Brother, I think you should know about the theory of sword spirit hormones, which is the mutual attraction between spirit swords. This has nothing to do with betrayal or not. All things have emotions, and so do sword spirits, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, between sword spirits, as long as those hormones connect, sometimes it's only a matter of a moment. Brother Ling's Jinka once attracted a lot of female sword spirits. But my abyss avoidance is a man. A man. A man. The corner of the young man's mouth twitched, and he was so angry that he repeated the important words 3 times. Oh, it's a man. Realization suddenly dawned on Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. You know, the hormones between spirit swords can't be understood with common sense. The Jinka in my brother Ling's hand belongs to the general offensive. As soon as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said this, Jinka's blade trembled slightly, the young man from Immortal Mansion, Wang Ling, so from the very beginning, it has nothing to do with gender. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his chin and said solemnly, my brother Ling's Jinka can be used by both men and women. Whether it's a male or female sword spirit, it can capture both. At that moment, the young man from Immortal Mansion truly felt like his 3 views had been destroyed. It was as if everyone present could vaguely hear the sound of his spiritual world shattering. He shook his head repeatedly and muttered as if he was possessed, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Then, this red-haired young man took a few steps back, and in the end, tears actually streamed down his face as he directly rushed off in one direction. This was probably the legendary running away in tears. Before the young man could run far, Song Qing-shu, who had been watching from the sidelines, came up to them and asked very curiously, Senior Immortal, is the sword spirit hormone theory you mentioned true? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, of course I made it up. Song Qing-shu, so, the connection between abyss avoidance and that young man is still there? Of course. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, abyss avoidance is very loyal, how can it be easily severed? That's just a smokescreen Brother Ling used. In any case, we've already obtained abyss avoidance. When this person returns, we'll have Brother Ling track him down, and we'll be able to grasp Immortal Mansion's specific location. For some reason, Song Qing-shu suddenly felt a little sorry for that young man from Immortal Mansion. This person had been completely tricked by these 2 people. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, so, what's the point of having a high realm? The biggest disadvantage of burying your head in cultivation is that you've seen too little of the world, and are easily fooled. I didn't get my nickname of Great Hoodwinker for nothing back then. But it seems that I used too much force just now. I don't know if that person can find his way home. Looking in the direction the young man from Immortal Mansion had run off in tears, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help sighing. AI, what a pity, another crazy one, Wang Ling and Song Qingshu. Chapter 207. As an old hand in the cultivation circle, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's nickname of the Great Hoodwinker wasn't just for show. If he sold crutches, he could hoodwink people into becoming lame, and if he sold cars, he could hoodwink people into driving. Back when the cultivation forum had been set up, it had been short of funds. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had relied on his eloquence to scurry around the streets and alleys in a black windbreaker to dupe anyone he met. Little brother, I can see that you're a one-in-a-million cultivation genius. I'm counting on you to maintain world peace. Relying on this line, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had sold a lot of self-made wooden spirit swords and hand-drawn manuals of cultivation techniques. Furthermore, his customers were all ignorant little cultivators who had just entered the cultivation circle. Actually, if you thought about it carefully, it was pretty wicked, so the reason why grenade-throwing Senior Immortal liked to meddle in other people's business and had become the revered great death-courting senior with a strong sense of justice in the circle was in fact to pay back those unbearable debts of the past. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal summed up his current behavior in 4 words, giving back to society. In fact, if he really wanted to trace back to the past, Wang Ling was surprised to find that his fate with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had actually started at a very young age. Because at that time, it was grenade-throwing Senior Immortal who had sold the Chanel sword that Wang Ling had broken to Father Wang under the guise of reselling it. After the old devil and the tearful young man from Immortal Mansion left one after another, the Villa Estate's security team and a large number of police cars arrived at the scene. The commotion caused by the young man from Immortal Mansion using abyss avoidance just now had been too big. Fortunately, Wang Ling had appeared in time to stop the damage, and the scene and the surrounding area hadn't suffered even more tragic damage. Otherwise, if that golden crescent had slashed out just now, its sword chi would have cut everything within a radius of 10,000 feet in half. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa had been severely damaged. Except for the basement, almost half of it had already collapsed. However, the man didn't feel the slightest heartache. Instead, he wept bitterly at the pile of dead broccoli in the back garden. All the flowers and plants he had planted in the back garden had died, and the only thing that had survived this chaotic battle was the hawthorn tree that the young man from Immortal Mansion had protected. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could never have imagined that this hawthorn tree could actually trigger such a catastrophe. Because a fight had taken place here, according to normal procedure, the 3 of them would be taken to the police station for statements. At that moment, Odd Zhua's value was once again demonstrated. Wang Ling had only sent Odd Zhua a text message, and the police captain who had been dispatched immediately received a call from the cultivation police station. The captain had turned this matter into a major one and dealt with it completely as an ordinary civil dispute. This matter concerned the old devil and Immortal Mansion, which they currently didn't know the ins and outs of, so even if the police got involved, it wouldn't be of much help. Thus, Wang Ling thought that after this matter was over, the police would clean up the mess. In this way, he would be able to escape unscathed. Hence, with Odd Zhua's instructions behind the scenes, the police captain in the end only took notes at the scene for show. Before leaving, the police captain saluted grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "Sir, we won't disturb you any further today. This incident was probably an accident. We've already discussed the subsequent property damage with the Villa Estate security, and will arrange for the relevant person in charge of the insurance company to pay you a visit." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gripped the police captain's hand tightly and was very excited. "Comrade, do you know the specific insurance coverage?" "Well, that depends on the insurance company's terms. We're not very clear." The police captain shook his head regretfully at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "The only thing I'm clear about is that the broccoli you planted, sir, is definitely not covered by the insurance." Standing on the side, Wang Ling saw grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's eyes instantly dim after the police captain said this. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had already given up on thinking. The problem was that Grandfather Wang had actually given him broccoli without any profound meaning. It really was just an ordinary broccoli. Elsewhere, the old devil had escaped back to his small world. Who would have thought that this peerless devil who had once set off huge waves in Huaxiao Nation and swaggered around would actually be reduced to this? He had left the mountain twice in a row, but in the end he had failed. On the boundary pillar of the small world, the old devil and Jiang Luiyue were both thinking. Sure enough, the crux of the problem is still that killer Taoist. The old devil's faint sigh came from the stone ghost mask. Once again, I underestimated this junior's realm. That Master Khan freak's strength is at the void refinement stage, and together with that abyss avoidance in his hand, he was able to overpower a void refinement devil spirit like me. But that junior was actually able to resist that sword power with just one finger, which is enough to prove that his strength is definitely above the void refinement stage. Senior, are you confident? Jiang Luiyue asked worriedly. Yes. The old devil replied very firmly, now, my venerable self has to ensure that my strength is restored to its peak. When that time comes, my venerable self will definitely refine that junior into a devil dragon under my command for my use. No matter what, the next time senior leaves the mountain, you have to think carefully first to prevent any unforeseen events, Jiang Luiyue reminded him on the side. Indeed. The old devil nodded. Recently, my venerable self has realized that as long as I take action, everything goes wrong. Recently, my venerable self has specially studied what modern people call constellations. Jiang Luiyue. Senior still believes in this? The old devil, of course. My venerable self even spent money to hire an astrologer online, who said that my venerable self has recently been in a water retrograde phase, so everything goes wrong. But he didn't explain clearly to me what on earth a water retrograde phase is. Jiang Luiyue, the old devil, speaking of which, this water retrograde phase is actually able to affect my venerable self's fortune, it's really quite amazing. Jiang Luiyue. There's a way to break the water retrograde phase, as long as Lord Devil Emperor carries the corresponding lucky item with you. That astrologer also said the same thing, and left me a way to break it. My venerable self has already taken a screenshot and saved it in your phone. But my venerable self still doesn't understand what it means. Speaking up to this point, the old devil directed Jiang Luiyue to open the first screenshot in her phone's photo album. It was a picture of an astrology card provided by the astrologer, and on it were written 3 letters, GCM. The old devil was puzzled no matter how he thought about it. My venerable self has thought about it for a long time, but I still can't figure out what on earth these 3 letters mean. After some thought, Jiang Luiyue silently turned on her phone's input method, switched to pinyin mode, and then typed the 3 letters GCM in sequence. Her expression instantly became enlightened. Chapter 208. Jiang Luiyue realized that the old devil seemed to have suddenly changed a lot after coming into contact with modern technology. There were a lot of rumors in WeChat moments, and as an old devil who had just come into contact with modern technology, he indeed lacked the ability to distinguish between them. So the feeling the old devil gave Jiang Luiyue now was that she had an old father who believed everything anyone said on his phone. Jiang Luiyue had always felt that horoscopes were pretty weird, but because of the old devil's identity, she didn't dare contradict him. After a moment of silence, Jiang Luiyue could only change the subject. Lord Devil Emperor, the students are about to undergo military training. Do you already have a plan? Of course, I've already planned everything. In the stone ghost mask, the old devil sneered. My venerable self looked it up online. The last time the gate between worlds descended was 6 years ago. Yes, Sir Demon Lord. Jiang Luiyue answered truthfully, but not long after the gate between worlds opened back then, the demon army inexplicably withdrew from it. There were many different opinions about what had happened in the past, but as for what the truth was, there was very little credible information. The official statement is that the demon emperor in the gate between worlds decided to withdraw because he was afraid of General Yi. That's not possible. The old devil's voice directly came out of the stone ghost mask. My venerable self and this Yi Jianchuan are old acquaintances. My venerable self is well aware of his capabilities. No matter how strong he is, he can't make the demon emperor of the gate between worlds cower in fear. Jiang Luiyue was suddenly a little puzzled. Why did Lord Devil Emperor suddenly mention the gate between worlds? Because this is also part of my grand plan to absorb vitality. The old devil replied, it'll be a full moon in 2 days. My venerable self knows a magic array that can gather the power of extreme Yin to summon the gate between worlds. When the gate between worlds descends, I'll carry out my plan. It'll be a good cover for me. The old devil didn't want his whereabouts to be exposed before he fully recovered. If he summoned the gate between worlds, he would be able to shift the blame to the demons inside the gate. Jiang Luiyue had already completely understood that this was a diversionary tactic to shift the blame to the West. However, would this plan be able to proceed smoothly? Jiang Luiyue didn't dare raise any flags, and started to worry in her heart. June 14th, the 8th Tuesday of the semester. On this day, the joint military training exercise of the 6 schools finally arrived. Students from all 6 schools in Peiyuan district had gathered, and 4 of them were students from key high schools. This made this joint military training quite a big event and attracted a lot of attention. Old Antique was still the chief commander in charge of leading the team this time. When Wang Ling arrived at school in the morning, he saw that there were still more than 10 buses lined up along the street outside the school gates. At this time, Old Antique was still having a morning meeting with the teachers in charge of each class, while the students of each class were lined up at the school gate, led by the sports committee member. Number 60 High's school gate was still that old stone statue whose face couldn't be seen clearly, and it was still the same pitiful handful of palm trees. It was still the same crowded little square at the main entrance, but there were now no less than 300 students lined up at the gate. In the team, Dopey Gua scanned the surroundings with a mysterious gaze. I heard that the instructors leading the classes have already arrived at the school. Where are they? Little Peanut asked in a low voice. Student Lotus Sun just came back from number 59 high school. She probably gathered a lot of important information after the exchange over the past few days, and is probably sharing it at the teacher's morning meeting now. I heard that the instructors went with her to the meeting, Dopey Gua replied. I have an uncle who told me that the instructors this time are ace instructors who were recruited through Student Lotus Sun's connections with Huagua Water Curtain Group. Apparently, each of them is a cultivator with a profound realm, and is one of those old revolutionaries who fought against the demon race invasion in the gate between worlds back then. Are they that awesome? Also, they all have one important characteristic. Each of them is a senior alchemist. As soon as Dopey Gua said this, Wang Ling seemed to smell a familiar scent in the crowd, and for some reason, he suddenly had a very bad feeling. Sure enough, he saw a flash of light in the distance, and in the blink of an eye, a handsome figure descended from the sky. It was a skinny, handsome man with gray hair and an ancient style. When Immortal Toya appeared, his posture was simply too handsome, just like a martial arts star in a movie. Every move he made was extremely dazzling. Even the way he descended from his flying sword was unbelievably handsome. Of course, a cultivator with a profound cultivation wouldn't pay any attention to Immortal Toya's movements. Cultivators nowadays didn't need wires to shoot movies. As long as they were trained in body techniques, they would look very handsome no matter what they did. But this time, his opponents were a group of Foundation Establishment high school students. His beautiful movements, coupled with Immortal Toya's ancient style and handsome appearance, caused the small square to burst into cries of surprise as soon as he appeared. Wang Ling was the only one standing in line, his face as calm and expressionless as an ancient well. To be honest, Wang Ling's heart was still a little moved. He never thought that the person leading the team this time would actually be Immortal Toya. But this was enough to show how much importance Headmaster Chen attached to the 6 schools' joint military training this time. An excellent drill master determined 40% of the success of the military training exercise. Of the remaining 60%, 50% depended on performance and 10% depended on luck. Immortal Toya's value in the circle wasn't low, even a casual cosplay at an anime festival could earn him several million HNY. If you asked Immortal Toya to customize an elixir, apart from making an appointment in advance, you also had to prepare at least 100 million HNY for refining it. This was the value of an excellent alchemist. Even if the school had used Huaguo Water Curtain Group's connections to invite Immortal Toya to be their drill master, Wang Ling felt that they had probably spent a lot of money behind the scenes. While Wang Ling was pondering this, Immortal Toya was already strolling over from the front. His snow-white ancient costume fluttered as he walked, and his 2 collarbones were faintly visible, causing the girls nearby to have nosebleeds. When he landed in the small square, the young man was completely unaware that Senior Ling, whom he respected the most, was also in line in the crowd. So when the gray-haired young man approached Grade 1, Class 3's line and his eyes met Wang Ling's, the young man's mind instantly went blank. Ling Jinren. What the hell? Chapter 209. The moment Immortal Toya saw Wang Ling, his mind went blank. Fortunately, he didn't have the habit of falling on flat ground. Otherwise, this old stone statue at number 60 High School's gate, which had stood erect for nearly 1,000 years, would have completely collapsed. And it wasn't just that, with number 60 High as the center, the tremors could be felt for dozens of li around it. A soul formation cultivator tripping was such a terrifying thing, but Immortal Toya quickly remembered, because grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had told him that Senior Ling was currently studying at a high school, and it seemed that his goal was to experience life. It was just that the young man had never expected Senior Ling to actually choose such an ordinary-looking high school, which wasn't even a key city high school. However, a big boss was a big boss after all. Ordinary people could not figure out what a big boss was thinking. Perhaps this was the gap between him and Senior Ling. Immortal Toya sighed quietly in his heart. Headmaster Chen had been waiting at the entrance of the school building for a long time. When he saw Immortal Toya suddenly stop in the line of students, he hurriedly came down the steps to greet him. "Immortal, what's wrong?" Hearing Headmaster Chen's question, the gray-haired young man immediately came to his senses. Seeing that Headmaster Chen was staring at him with a puzzled expression, he immediately shook his head. "Oh, it's nothing. It's just a little emotional." Of course, he wouldn't divulge anything about Senior Ling. It had to be said that Immortal Toya's reaction was very quick. Words like this, which touched on the scene, were actually quite appropriate in a place like a school. How many cultivators who had started cultivating couldn't even find their alma mater now? After Huaxiao Nation was founded, most of the sects set up by individual cultivators had already been disbanded, and only a very small number of them had obtained a license from the government to be classified as light forces. So even if it wasn't because of Wang Ling, the young man was still a little touched. After all, number 60 High School was a 1,000-year-old school. At 8:00 in the morning, number 60 High's bus fleet set off on time. On the way, Little Peanut had raised a very constructive question about the equipment that had been scattered on the map during the survival drill this time. That was because the equipment everyone had used in the previous Spirit Sword exchange meet between number 59 High School and number 60 High School had been designed by General Yi. This was a good question, and Old Antique had initially planned to answer it when they got there. But now that someone had brought it up, there was no harm in explaining it along the way. The magic treasures distributed on the map for the survival drill this time were also made up by General Yi, but they're all genuine. Because of our 6 schools' joint military training this time, plus this survival drill, General Yi had actually already found someone to specially make a batch of magic treasures 3 months ago. Because the map this time is bigger, there are tens of thousands of custom-made magic treasures, Old Antique explained. Tens of thousands? Many people in the bus exclaimed. Among these tens of thousands of magic treasures, even those low-quality magic treasures that were placed on the map to make up the numbers could be mass-produced in just 3 months. This was truly incredible. Cupping his chin in his hand, Master of Dopey pushed up his glasses and seemed to think of something. As far as I know, there are currently only 2 factories in Huaxiao that can mass-produce magic treasures. Which 2? Super Chin asked. Dopey Gua answered with a straight face, Lanxiang and New East. Super Chin was startled. Doesn't one of them operate excavators and the other teach English? They've changed classes. Dopey Gua spread his hands. Nowadays, operating excavators and teaching English don't make money. Any golden core cultivator can tear down a building with one punch, why would they need excavators? And teaching English, ever since our Huaxiu people stood up, the whole world has been speaking Huaxiu. Everyone, after about an hour on the road, number 60 High finally arrived at a military training base in the western suburbs of Huaxiu Nation. The military training this time would last 5 days, and the most important survival drill would officially begin the day after tomorrow. Today was the day when students from the 6 schools would gather at the military base. As the 2 large iron gates, which were dozens of meters wide, slowly opened, the bus slowly drove into the base. This was a military training base that Songhai city government had specially set up for the city's students, and it had all kinds of facilities. There were school buildings, dormitories, a large sports field, and cube-shaped training rooms that gave off a technological feel. The dormitories during the military training were all 6-person, and Wang Ling, Super Chen, Dopey Gua and Little Peanut were assigned to one room. As luck would have it, they were assigned to room 101 on the first floor of the dormitory. But the strange thing was that Wang Ling saw that there were only 4 of their names on the list of names in room 101. Were the other 2 beds empty? Wang Ling denied this conjecture. It shouldn't be possible, because all the other dormitories were occupied by 6 people. Furthermore, they were in the first room of this dormitory, so it was completely impossible for there to be 2 empty spots in the first room. Dopey Gua, who had the honor of being dormitory leader this time, had to organize the military supplies, so he dragged Super Chin away. Wang Ling and Little Peanut took the keys to the door of the dormitory. As they approached, Little Peanut could already sense the aura in the room. There was someone inside. There seems to be someone inside. Little Peanut said weakly. In fact, Wang Ling had sensed it as soon as he stepped into the building. He could sense that the person was lurking in the dormitory, and that it was a premeditated act. Most importantly, he was very familiar with this person's aura. Wang Ling gestured for Little Peanut to stand next to the door. Then, he inserted the key and turned the handle. As soon as the door opened, a large shadow instantly shot out from inside. Classmate Wang Ling, watch out! Little Peanut almost instantly cried out in alarm at the sight of this massive hidden weapon. Wang Ling's expression was very calm in the face of this black shadow that was shooting straight at him. The moment it approached him, he turned to the side and perfectly dodged it. Then, there was a boom. This black shadow directly went through the door and smashed into the wall in front of the dormitory. When the dust settled, Little Peanut could finally see clearly that this black shadow that looked like a hidden weapon was actually a person. The person had been wearing a helmet when he had been shot out of the dormitory, and because the impact had been too great, his entire head had been embedded in the wall. Then, Little Peanut saw the person struggle for a long time, but still couldn't free himself from the helmet. Little Peanut. In the end, the young man in the helmet weakly cried for help. Ling, I was wrong. Come and save me. Chapter 210. Wang Ling felt that the military training this time had given him a little too many pleasant surprises. Not only was Immortal Toya the chief instructor, even Wang Ming had actually appeared, so the question was, why was Wang Ming here? And whose bed was the only one left in the room? As he pondered these questions, Wang Ling looked at Wang Ming, whose entire head was embedded in the wall along with his helmet. He sighed in his heart, then stretched out his hand to pry the wall open and very carefully pull Wang Ming out. Wang Ling felt that if he didn't pull Wang Ming out, it was very likely that the peripheral nerves in Wang Ming's body would die and his brain would be suffocated. After all, the most valuable thing on Wang Ming's body was his brain. Although Wang Ling had always felt that this guy's IQ would go offline every time they met. Finally able to breathe in fresh air, Wang Ming lay on the ground and gasped for air. Then, he sighed faintly and clenched his fists as he said resentfully, "I never thought that the hammer sparks I've been planning for so long would actually fail. Wang Ling, little peanut, you're Wang Ling's classmate, right?" Wang Ming dusted himself off, stood up, and shook little peanut's hand. "I'm Wang Shower, a new transfer student. Please advise me." For some reason, little peanut's heart couldn't help trembling a little. A person who could transfer schools midway definitely wasn't ordinary, but little peanut hadn't sensed any aura on Wang Ming. His intuition told him that this was a very dangerous person. To actually be able to hide his aura so perfectly, this person had to be an expert. As little peanut and Wang Ming shook hands, his mind was filled with wild and fanciful thoughts. "Wang Ling, you're thinking too much." Wang Ling gave the key to little peanut, then left an earth-calming talisman at the scene for little peanut to fill in the hole Wang Ming had made. He planned to find a secluded place to talk to Wang Ming alone. The dormitory building for the military training was public property, leaving such a hole in it would definitely be held accountable for it. Wang Ling didn't want to be implicated and punished by the drill master to run laps. Tens of thousands of students from the 6 schools were watching, which was really too eye-catching. On the rooftop of the dormitory building, Wang Ling dragged Wang Ming and teleported here. After the sneak attack just now, Wang Ming finally took the helmet off his head. He then pointed at the spring launcher tied to his ankle with an incredulous expression on his face. "I obtained some primordial black crystal earlier, which is the hardest metal in the universe. I thought I could use it to knock you out. I didn't expect it to fail." Primordial mysterious crystal. Wang Ling stared at the helmet for a while, then stretched out his hand and with a crack, he crushed it in his hand. After a very long time, Wang Ming sighed sorrowfully in his heart. Sure enough. They were just brothers on the surface. Wang Ming wanted to cry but had no tears. "Ling, can you give your brother some face? It makes me feel stupid every time I go on stage." Wang Ling didn't say anything. He just crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Wang Ming inquiringly. Even without telepathy, Wang Ming knew what Wang Ling wanted to ask. He immediately spread his hands. "Don't look at me like that, I'm really here on business this time. Generally found a factory to produce such a large batch of magic treasures in 3 months, so there might be some quality issues. So this time, I brought my own team here to wait and repair the magic treasures that were damaged during the drill." This was true. Wang Ming knew that Wang Ling had the mind-reading ability, so there was no need for him to lie in front of him. After understanding why Wang Ming was here, Wang Ling was actually a lot more relieved. After all, Wang Ming was a cultivation muggle, and number 60 High hadn't been very peaceful recently. If he really transferred to number 60 High to study, it would actually be quite dangerous. At this stage, accepting government protection was the best option for Wang Ming. Who knew when another younger sister of the Master of Shadow Stream would appear and abduct Wang Ming? To be honest, Wang Ling still had lingering fears after what had happened last time. If Wang Ming was gone, no one would be able to make the subsequent Dao Talisman seals, and even Wang Ling himself couldn't predict what would happen in the future. Now, as the 2 brothers stood on the rooftop, their hearts were in fact as clear as a mirror. "That's right. Ling, there's something else I think you'll be very interested in," Wang Ming suddenly said. "Although the main purpose of my research team this time is to repair the magic treasures, there's actually another side job. 2 years ago, our Academy of Science developed an instrument that can detect abnormal fluctuations in Huaxiao Nation. Recently, this instrument had detected a strange signal. Our initial assessment is that this signal has something to do with the gate between worlds." Hearing this, Wang Ling's eyes suddenly lit up. Because this already wasn't his first time coming into contact with this gate that connected the 2 worlds of demons and demons. Furthermore, Wang Ling realized that there were actually a lot of people around him who were related to the gate between worlds. For example, Old Li and his group of people whom he had rescued 3 years ago, or Loopy Toad, who had fallen from the sky 6 years ago and had now turned into a dog. After the demon army withdrew 6 years ago, General Yi teamed up with 9 other generals to seal off the gate between worlds. Logically speaking, the gate between worlds shouldn't appear in the short term. The few times in history when the gate between worlds has appeared, it's been 100 years or even several hundred years. When Wang Ming said this, he paused for a moment, and then gave his own assessment. So I think that the fluctuations from the gate between worlds this time definitely aren't normal. Also, I suspect that someone is summoning the gate between worlds to descend, and is planning to work together from the inside. Wang Ming's assessment was in fact well-founded, because the timing of the gate between worlds' reappearance indeed wasn't normal. What kind of person was General Yi? He was one of the 10 founding generals back then, and had an extremely high realm. Now, he was an extraterrestrial peace ambassador who was often sent to mediate extraterrestrial wars. Even if General Yi had acted alone back then, it would have been enough to seal the gate between worlds for 100 years. But among the people who had worked together to seal it back then, there were still 9 people as awesome as General Yi. The 10 founding generals had worked together to seal it. Just how powerful was the seal? The goal was to ensure that Huaxiao Nation wouldn't be troubled by the gate between worlds for at least the next 1,000 years. But it had only been 6 years, and the gate between worlds had actually detected fluctuations again. What on earth was the reason behind this? Wang Ling's imagination ran wild. Actually, Wang Ling could already more or less guess who on earth was behind this. It was the person who most wanted to cause chaos to cover up his reappearance. Chapter 211. Thus, Wang Ming's identity as a transfer student was just a cover. After this military training exercise ended, Wang Ming would disappear. After the 2 brothers met face to face on the rooftop, Wang Ling promised to erase the memories of the people around him after Wang Ming disappeared. As for the other empty bed in the room, Wang Ming had in fact deliberately used it as a cover. In fact, Wang Ming was the only one who had moved in. To avoid arousing suspicion, the drill instructors weren't allowed to live with the students during the military training period, and there was a separate dormitory for the drill instructors to live in. After Dopey Guo pulled Super Chen back with the military supplies, they saw that there was a new brother in the dormitory, and the 2 of them immediately started chatting with Wang Ming. It just so happened that a transfer student had come during the military training period, and had been dragged into the military training. Both of them felt that Wang Ming's identity wasn't simple. The most important thing was that they actually couldn't sense any aura from Wang Ming. This aura concealing technique was really too powerful. If they used it in this survival drill, it would be a great weapon. In a situation where they couldn't sense any aura at all, Wang Ming could hide in the grass and wait for an opportunity to strike. He would definitely be an expert at playing dirty. Which school did this brother go to before? Super Chen was very curious about Wang Ming's identity. From Wang Ming, they had already learned that Wang Ling and Wang Ming were actually neighbors who used to live together. The 2 brothers actually had a tacit understanding about hiding their brother's identity. After this question was asked, everyone on the side also looked at Wang Ming eagerly. Only Wang Ling was lying on the bed with his head pillowed on his head. He wasn't in the mood to talk nonsense with this idiot, and he wasn't worried about Wang Ming's integration at all. That was because this guy was a natural at everything. Furthermore, when he lied, he never drafted a script. After all, these lies were all directly fabricated by the government. The worst part was that even the cultivation police couldn't find any clues when they checked his ID card. So in the face of Super Chen's question, Wang Ming answered almost without hesitation, "I studied at Fragrant Pavilion in Yunding Heavenly Palace before." Fragrant Pavilion in Yunding Heavenly Palace? Super Chen was startled, because he had never heard of this school before. Dopey Guo patted his head. At the same time, he was a little surprised that there were actually things in this world that he, Master of Dopey, didn't know. Dopey Guo knew all the major high schools in Huaxiao Nation. If there was something he had missed, there was only one possibility. This Cloud Top Heavenly Palace's Fragrant Pavilion and Water Pavilion was most likely a private school. If it was a private school, it was normal that they didn't know about it. Even though the Gold Core stage was now included in the national compulsory education. However, it was also possible to not go to these public schools. Private schools and the sects of the light sects were another big choice. Moreover, if it was a private school, they would usually not recruit students through the internet. Instead, they would enter the school through private channels. Most importantly, the people who entered the school were either rich or respectable. Super Chen, Dopey Gua, and Little Peanut stared impatiently at this classmate, Wang Xiaoer, in front of them with indescribable astonishment in their eyes. It turned out that this guy was a big shot. What cultivators liked to do the most was to exchange experiences. It wasn't easy to find a big shot from a private school, and the three of them worshipped Wang Ming to the core. Because the name on Wang Ming's ID card was Wang Xiaoer, Super Chen simply called him second brother. Second brother, I want to ask, what do you study in your private school? Wang Ming hummed in agreement, rubbed his chin, and thought for a moment before replying, Turtle Wave Heart Sutra. Turtle Wave Heart Sutra. Dopey Gua's eyes widened. Could it be that this is the legendary Kamehameha Cultivation Heart Sutra? This is a heaven-level technique. There are very few people in the world who can master it. It doesn't seem that difficult. Wang Ming spread his hands. Everyone in our school basically knows it. Also, let me tell you, the Turtle Wave Heart Sutra is actually already outdated. It's too powerful. As soon as it's released, the enemy will already be able to sense it from a long distance away. No matter how amazing the technique is, if it can't hit its target, what's the use? That's true. The three of them nodded noncommittally. Wang Ming, so in the Turtle Wave Heart Sutra, based on the Turtle Wave Heart Sutra, our school's headmaster invented a kind of energy wave that can hit a cow from 1,000 li away. It's soundless and doesn't cause any fluctuations. The three of them were stunned by Wang Ming. There's this kind of operation. What kind of energy wave is this? What's it called? Wang Ming narrowed his eyes mysteriously and said 3 words, non-showy wave. Non-showy wave? The three of them were stupefied. What kind of technique was this? It was actually called non-showy wave. Wang Ming continued, like I said before, when you use the energy wave, there's no sound at all, not even the slightest fluctuation. Soundless and soundless, it's called non-showy wave. After saying that, Wang Ming slowly got up. Looking out the window, he slowly took off his coat to reveal a body full of sinewy muscles. He pointed to a red mark on his back. Your second brother suffered a lot to cultivate this technique. The headmaster threw him deep in the mountains and forests. When he was thirsty, he drank dew. When he was hungry, he ate grasshoppers, and fought spirit beasts day in and day out to cultivate. This red mark was left behind when I was injured when I was cultivating. Wang Ling picked his ear and couldn't bear to listen anymore, because this red mark was basically a birthmark. Hearing Wang Ming's words, Super Chen and the others sucked in cold breaths of air and were extremely excited. Second brother is too awesome. Wang Ming put his clothes back on, and his gaze was unprecedentedly deep. Outside the window. Like the protagonist in Kung Fu who finally used the Buddha's palm on fire cloud evil god, he put his hands behind his back and looked calmly at the 3 people who were looking at him with reverence in their eyes. If you want to learn, I can teach you. Thus, after a short exchange of 10 minutes or so, Wang Ming had already completely become one with the 3 of them. Second brother, when can you explain the principle behind the non-showy wave to us? Second brother, what's the basic formula for the Turtle Wave Heart Sutra? Can you teach us? Also, are there any specific things to take note of when cultivating the Turtle Wave Heart Sutra? Things to take note of. There aren't any things to take note of. Wang Ming smiled with a very gentle expression. As long as you cultivate with me, I guarantee that you'll get super high marks in the college entrance exam. After saying that, he didn't forget to look at Wang Ling on the upper bunk. The brother upstairs, aren't you going to worship me as your master? Wang Ling. Chapter 212. The scale of the military training depended on both the cost of the exercise and the leaders who would be observing it. There were indeed a lot of leaders present for the 6 schools' joint military training exercise this time. Jua, who represented the general administration of 100 schools, was here, and Secretary Dakang of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools was also here. Apart from them, the headmasters of the 6 schools were all present to supervise the exercise. There were indeed a lot of students participating this time. While the military training exercise was very important, so was the safety of the students. At noon that day, Immortal Toya was called to a meeting again. As the chief instructor of the military training this time, he was equally responsible for the safety of the students. In the conference room, Secretary Dakang, Jua, Headmaster Jean of number 59 High School, Headmaster Chen of number 60 High School, Headmaster Qian of Building Materials High School, Headmaster Sun of God Vision High School and Headmaster Hong of Prime Elevation High School were all present. Why isn't Headmaster Yu of Reliance High School here yet? Sitting on a bench in the middle of the conference room, Secretary Dakang cupped his chin and crossed his fingers. He frowned a little unhappily. I heard that Patriarch Reliance has just come out of seclusion and is now on his way here. Headmaster Hong of Prime Elevation High School, who was Reliance High School's partner in the alliance this time, spoke to smooth things over. I knew this kid would be late. The old secretary sighed. Back then, this kid was a seclusion maniac. Back in the day, before Reliance High School had been established, he had founded the Reliance sect. He had found a mountain to build the sect, and after the sect had been repaired, he had gathered a few elders and vassals, and then he had gone into secluded meditation. By the time he came out, several hundred years had already passed, and who knows how many disciples the sect had. All the headmasters, Secretary Dakang and this senior patriarch Reliance are from the same school. How do you know him so well? Immortal Toya asked curiously on the side. How could I possibly be from the same school as him? Of course I know him because of the establishment of Reliance High School back then. It was also because of the Reliance High School issue that I met him a lot before. The old secretary pursed his lips, swept his gaze over everyone, and smiled. All schools in Huaxiao Nation have to go through our alliance of 10,000 schools for approval, do you know this? Everyone nodded. Of course. The old secretary said, of course, this approval will not be approved in a short period of time. We have to go through the procedures when we work in the government. After submitting the application, the approval process usually takes 15 working days. Headmaster Chen nodded. That's right. It does take that long. Moreover, the principal who applied for the establishment of the school had to be present to sign and leave his fingerprint, and register the address of the school on the spot. Only then will it be approved by the school. This is where the problem lies. Secretary Dakang smiled wryly. Back then, Patriarch Reliance would choose to go into seclusion every time he submitted his application. He went into seclusion for 100 years. All the principals, Secretary Dakang, the most important thing is that after this guy came out of seclusion, he once again submitted the materials, and then couldn't help but go into seclusion again. Just like that, our alliance of 10,000 schools received a total of 6 applications, and Reliance High School only applied after 600 years. If we could save 600 years, it would be a 1,000-year-old school by now. All the principals, for a long time, the conference room was silent. After another 5 or 6 minutes, Jua's phone finally rang. There's news from Patriarch Reliance. He sent a text. Secretary Dakang, oh. What did he say? He said, Jua's expression didn't look good when he read the text. After pondering for a moment, he finally read out the contents of Patriarch Reliance's message. I'm going to faint. I just came out of seclusion. Why is everyone so quiet? Aren't you surfing the internet? How many GGs and beauties are here today? Is there my favorite Salian Jinren? I heard that Immortal Toya is also here today. I'm a junior who likes marinated purple rapeseed flowers. I'm still on my way. See you later, moi. After Jua finished reading, everyone in the room instantly sucked in a cold breath. Immortal Toya wiped at his sweat. Hearing that this patriarch Reliance actually had a good impression of him, he was a little startled, and at the same time a little suspicious about the contents of the text. Director Joie, is this really from Senior Patriarch Reliance? Joie nodded in disbelief, and after confirming it over and over again, he nodded. It's absolutely true. Everyone instantly felt that Patriarch Reliance's image was crumbling a little. The Grand Patriarch Reliance was actually a non-mainstream person. Could it be that because of his backer, the network signal wasn't very good, and the village's network had only just been connected? Don't doubt it, this tone is undoubtedly Patriarch Reliance. The corner of Secretary Dakang's mouth twitched. Although Patriarch Reliance is a seclusion maniac, he has always chosen to do it in his hometown, Reliance Mountain Village. Indeed, the network signal in the village isn't very good. Everyone, Secretary Dakang, but unfortunately, Patriarch Reliance always thinks he's very fashionable. Everyone, another 10 minutes passed, and Patriarch Reliance, Headmaster Yu of Reliance High School, still hadn't shown up. Joie looked at the text on his phone and saw that Patriarch Reliance had sent a second message. Patriarch Reliance has been in seclusion for a long time, and doesn't know that odd-even numbers are now restricted to travel. It seems that he was detained on his flying sword on the road, and is still being dealt with at the police station. Everyone, the old secretary was already a little impatient, and simply presided over the meeting. He turned his gaze to Headmaster Hong on the side. Forget about him, let's start our meeting first. Little Hong, your Prime Elevation High School and Reliance High School are in an alliance this time, so you'll be responsible for passing on the content of the meeting later. Yes, Secretary. Headmaster Hong nodded. The meeting officially began. The old secretary looked at the little notebook he had prepared. He had set up a lot of questions for discussion regarding the military training exercise this time. After all, the 6 schools would be conducting the survival drill as a pilot, and there were actually still a lot of loopholes. What they needed to do now was to find and fill in the gaps in time during the discussion. General E attaches great importance to this drill. 3 months ago, he specially ordered a large number of magic treasures for the students to use on this map. This will be a great test of the students' adaptability and flexibility in using magic treasures. Chapter 213. Naturally, the old secretary's question wasn't superfluous. If the magic treasures weren't easy to use, progress would indeed be greatly delayed. The survival drill this time would last from start to finish, with over 10,000 people competing for the right to survive on the map. The expert group predicted that it would take 3 days. This was the best time to train the students' adaptability and unity, and at the same time to ensure that it was exciting. But if the unstable factor of the magic treasures affected the time limit, the effect would be very poor. How about we drop a limited number of instruction manuals near the map? Immortal Toya immediately replied. Secretary Dakang nodded. I've already thought of that. Furthermore, we can make the instruction manuals into something like an electronic illustrated handbook, which will automatically explain them as long as they scan the magic treasures. This will also make it easier for the students to understand the characteristics of the magic treasures. What do you think? Number 59 High School's headmaster Jean shook his head. I have no objections. No objections. The other headmasters also expressed their views. Very well, then it's settled for now. The old secretary looked at his notebook. There's another problem, which is the number of people participating in the survival drill. Although there are over 10,000 of us participating this time, the combined number of people from number 59 High School and number 60 High School is less than 800. This issue had to do with the fairness of the military exercise, and was in fact quite serious. God Vision High School's headmaster Sun frowned. Why are there so few people? Headmaster Chin sighed pitifully. Although we're now Key City High School candidates, of course we can't compare with the real Key City High Schools. There's a limit to the number of students we can recruit every year. 400 new students in grade 1 is already the limit. Headmaster Chen pointed out the problem with one sentence. If it was a key city high school, they could recruit over 1,000 people every year. The other headmasters all had helpless expressions on their faces. They had actually overlooked this problem. Although it was good to see the 2 key city high schools team up against the 4 key high schools in the military training exercise this time, if the number of participants wasn't fair, this competition was actually meaningless. So now, we can only think of other ways to balance them. The old secretary said, "This time, we'll use an array to transport the students to the sky above the map, and then drop them together. Let me make a suggestion. We can set up an array to drop the students from number 59 high school and number 60 high school in an area with a high concentration of magic treasures. Headmasters, what do you think?" "I have no objections." Prime Elevation High School's headmaster Hong added, "This is indeed unfair. I think we can even prepare a magic treasure illustrated handbook for the children of number 60 high school and number 59 high school. How about that?" The other principals continued to shake their heads. "Yes, that's possible. We have no objections." It was just 800 people. In the eyes of these principals, it was complete nonsense to rely on these 800 people to fight against over 9,000 people from the other 4 schools. When Immortal Toya heard this, the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching slightly. Although number 59 high school and number 60 high school only had 800 people in total, there was still Lingzhenren, this bug. Immortal Toya felt that he could already see the end of the story. "When will the teleportation begin?" Headmaster Chen asked when the discussion was almost done. The old secretary looked at the time and replied, "It starts at 6 tonight." "So fast? Don't we still have training?" Only sudden incidents can test the adaptability of this group of children. As for the traditional military training, these can be carried out after the drill, the old secretary said. After saying this, he turned his gaze to Odd Zhua. "Is the teleportation array ready?" Odd Zhua nodded seriously. "Yes, it's ready." Before the children arrived at the military base, the teleportation array had already been secretly set up outside the dormitory building. Once it's activated, all the students in the dormitory building will be instantly teleported to the map for the drill. Hearing this, the principals were a little astonished. They had originally thought that the students would be gathered together first before entering the array together for the teleportation. They completely hadn't expected this to happen. This also meant that the students would be directly teleported to the map while completely unprepared. Speaking up to this point, Odd Zhua sighed slightly. "Now, we just need Reliance High School's headmaster Yu's signature. As long as he signs it, we can activate the array on time tonight." Call him right away. Tell him that it's my order. I want him here in 10 minutes. Otherwise, Reliance High School will directly lose its right to participate in the drill. Also, little Zhuazi, tell him that if he doesn't get here in 10 minutes, his Reliance High School will probably be demoted next year, the old secretary said. "Odd Zhua, isn't that too harsh?" "It's not harsh at all." Secretary Dakang shook his head painfully and let out a sigh that no one understood his good intentions. "Is he at the police station now?" "I'm just afraid that while he's drinking tea, he'll think about going into seclusion." Everyone, the sky in the western suburbs of Songhai City was dotted with stars at night. That night, all the students were called into the dormitory building to fill out the so-called camp entry handbook. Wang Ling knew that the headmasters of the 6 schools had deliberately arranged this to gather all the students in the dormitory building. Wang Ling had long since discovered the magic array that had been set up around the dormitory building. This survival drill was definitely going to be a surprise attack. It could be said that Wang Ling had completely seen through the plans of the headmasters of the 6 schools. But the only thing that worried Wang Ling a little was the exotic magic treasures that General Yi had developed. Who knew what kind of random things they would pick up on the map this time? Wang Ling filled out the handbook and sat cross-legged on his bed, deep in thought. At that moment, there was movement outside the door. Wang Ming had returned with his 3 new underlings. "Brother Heir, please sit." As soon as he entered, Super Chen pulled out a chair for Wang Ming to sit in like a lackey, then looked at Dopey Gua and Little Peanut. "You two, go pour a glass of water for Brother Air." He then rolled up his sleeves, intending to start massaging Wang Ming's shoulders. As soon as he put his hand on Wang Ming's shoulder, Wang Ming straightaway shivered. "What are you doing?" Wang Ming turned his head to look at Super Chen. Super Chen answered truthfully, "Brother Air had a hard time teaching us how to cultivate the non-showy wave just now. My family is a sports family, and I learned acupoint massage from my dad before, so I wanted to massage Brother Air's shoulders." It's fine, I'm not tired." Wang Ming actually felt a little guilty when he said this. He was well aware of the consequences of letting a foundation establishment cultivator massage his shoulders with his muggle body. Chapter 214. It was still June 14th, and it was already 5:00 in the evening. From arriving at the military training base to applying for military supplies, to filling in the camp handbook. Today's schedule didn't look very tight, and many students even felt that the military training this time wasn't as harsh as they had imagined. They just needed to strive to get a good ranking for their school in the survival drill. In the dormitory building, the students of number 59 high school and number 60 high school had been arranged in one area. Some were discussing tactics, while others were chatting idly. The overall atmosphere looked very relaxed. At around 5:30, Old Antique came to check on the dormitory. He counted the number of people in the dormitory and confirmed that there were no students outside. Furthermore, Old Antique gave each of them something, which was an electronic illustrated handbook the size of a palm. But he didn't explain what this handbook was for, and then left with the spicy strip in his mouth. Super Chen studied it for a long while, but couldn't figure it out. "Second brother, do you know what this is?" Super Chen asked. Resting his head on his pillow, Wang Ming sat on one side of the wall in a tilted chair. Crossing his long, straight legs on the desk, he raised his eyes lazily and quickly replied, "Isn't this an electronic illustrated handbook? Generally mass-produced so many magic treasures this time, there's bound to be some you don't know how to use. With this handbook, it should be a lot more convenient for us when we enter the map." Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming smiled slightly. "Also, only our number 60 high school and number 59 high school should have this thing. The other 4 schools didn't get it. Our 2 schools' allied forces only have 800 people in total, while the other 4 schools have more than 9,000 people in total. There's a disparity in numbers at all. This is probably a counterbalance measure that the headmasters of the 6 schools came up with after discussing it together." In the dormitory, several people raised their heads, and their eyes instantly lit up. There was this kind of operation. But can we really bring this thing in? I heard that once we enter the array, the power of the array will block the storage space on our bodies by default, and we won't be allowed to bring magic treasures into the map, Little Peanut asked. Wang Ming narrowed his eyes and smiled. "It's fine, this array has been set up, and this electronic illustrated handbook isn't within its range." At that moment, even Dopey Gua couldn't help but admire this second brother of Wang Ming's powerful eyes and ears. Even he, a gossip expert, didn't know about this, but this second brother actually knew. Wang Ling, nonsense, it was Wang Ming who had drawn the array design. It would be strange if this guy didn't know. Time flew, and when it was nearly 5:55 in the evening, the 2 brothers of the Wang family opened their eyes at the same time. Both Wang Ling and Wang Ming could sense that the magic array outside the dormitory was already in the activation stage. Wang Ling secretly opened his heavenly eye to take a look, and realized that this magic array really wasn't just big, it encompassed almost all the dormitory buildings in the military training base. Furthermore, the structure of the array was complex and ever-changing. Even a top array master wouldn't be able to set it up in less than half a year. In fact, Wang Ming had started to design this blueprint as early as 2 years ago. Although he didn't have spirit energy, he had played a key role in the high-level calculations and all kinds of complex formulas needed to set up an array. With a simple sweep of his heavenly eye, Wang Ling could already see hundreds of thousands of complicated formulas on the array's surface. If it wasn't for this most powerful brain, a normal person really wouldn't be able to take it all in. This array was connected to a small world created by an almighty cultivator. Just from the structure of the array, Wang Ling knew that the flow of time in this small world was different from that in the outside world. Wang Ming got up and stood at the window as he looked at the faint light outside. It looked a little like the light of an incandescent lamp, but was in fact the light emitted by an array when it was in operation. He calculated in his heart that the array would be fully activated in a little over 3 minutes. Taking a deep breath, Wang Ming checked the people in the dormitory, and found that Hero Guo was unexpectedly missing. He pointed at Dopey Guo's bed. "Where is he?" "Super Chen," Dopey said he had a stomachache, so he went to the bathroom. Wang Ming, at the same time, on the roof of the dormitory building, a dark space tunnel opened. A pair of hands stretched out from the tunnel to grab at a corner, and then a figure struggled free. "I finally made it." With the help of Jiang Liuyue's body, the old devil appeared. Inside the stone ghost mask, Jiang Liuyue sensed the huge array outside the dormitory building, and was a little surprised. This array is really a big deal. Unless an almighty took action, there's no way they could have set it up. Furthermore, I can vaguely sense that there are experts nearby. This time, the headmasters of the 6 schools and that head of the alliance of 10,000 schools have all gathered together. "Senior, are you really confident?" My venerable self heard that one of the headmasters of the 6 schools is Patriarch Reliance. Given my current state, apart from Patriarch Reliance and that old secretary, I don't care about anyone else. The old devil snorted. The last 2 failures were because my venerable self had overlooked that Junior called Killer Taoist. As long as he doesn't come to stir things up this time, everything else is fine. That person seems to have an unusual relationship with the cultivation forum. Inside the stone ghost mask, Jiang Liuyue smiled bitterly. The last few times this person appeared, it was because we got involved with that great death-courting senior from the cultivation forum. Senior shouldn't have so many misgivings today. That's right. The old devil nodded, and spirit light flashed in his hand as a green flag appeared. An array guiding flag? Jiang Liuyue was astonished. This array guiding flag was a very practical magic treasure that could instantly change the location of an array that had been set up beforehand. But she had also heard that array guiding flags had been used by criminals back then to trigger a huge catastrophe. Thus, array guiding flags had already disappeared from the market 1,000 years ago. The most frightening thing was that they couldn't even be bought on the black market or at auction houses. It could only be said that the old devil was in the end an old devil. There weren't many people nowadays who could produce so many ancient treasures. Back in my venerable self's small world, I've already set up the magic array that connects to the gate between worlds. Holding the array guiding flag, the old devil sneered. Once my venerable self and this group of students sneak into the small world where they're conducting their drill, we'll use the array guiding flag to open the gate between worlds in that small world, and we'll be able to pull the wool over everyone's eyes and ears without making a sound. Then my venerable self can take advantage of this opportunity to suck dry the vitality of these tens of thousands of students and reappear in the world. Speaking up to this point, the old devil smiled lightly. Do you know why my venerable self was ranked as the #1 devil in history back then? Jiang Liuyue, why? That's because no one else was as vicious as my venerable self. The old devil said, my venerable self was able to strike fear into the hearts of the world because of my peers. Chapter 215. The old devil was actually telling the truth. Anyone who could stand out in any industry relied on their peers to set them off. This actually made sense. Take a look at all the villains in history. After they died, they compromised and made a secret deal with the protagonist, but in the end they were set up and killed instead. They pretended to take people in as disciples and wanted to devour their souls and flesh after fattening up, but in the end failed and self-destructed. There were also those who held high the flag before a battle, thinking that they would definitely win, but in the end were beaten up so badly that even their own mothers wouldn't recognize them. Furthermore, the old devil felt that all villains had one thing in common: they talked a lot. There were only a few minutes left before the array was activated. In the toilet of the military training dormitory, Master of Dopey was still clutching his stomach and struggling bitterly. He didn't know what on earth he had eaten today, but his stomach had inexplicably started to hurt. He squatted on the toilet bowl with his hands on the handles. He looked like he was about to collapse. What on earth had he eaten? Dopey-Guo felt like his brain had already lost the ability to think. Oh, that was right. Just as Dopey-Guo was about to break down, he remembered something. It wasn't that he had eaten something bad today. He remembered that when he had passed by the corridor yesterday, he had eaten a new dish that Mother Wan had made. It was a rice dish with smoothies made from rice. Mother Wan had even given it a very nice name, Fan Bing Bing. At that time, Mother Wan had been experimenting in the corridor. The problem was that he had only taken one bite. Furthermore, he hadn't felt any discomfort at that time. Clutching his stomach, Dopey-Guo wanted to cry but had no tears. At that moment, he was astonished to discover that Mother Wan's dark cuisine had been upgraded, and now it actually had a strong after effect, which was too scary. Time ticked by. Dopey-Guo looked at the time weakly and realized that it was almost 6 o'clock. He had already been squatting in the toilet for more than 10 minutes. At that moment, he saw the tiles under his feet actually start to tremble slightly. An earthquake? Dopey-Guo was very puzzled, because if it was an earthquake, it actually wouldn't have felt this strong. But at that moment, he saw a white light penetrate the crack under the squatting cubicle next door. Nah, Nanny. Dopey-Guo was so scared that he peed his pants. In the next moment, he felt his body gradually turn into nothingness. Following that, the mist in front of him changed, and there were endless tunnels. Dopey-Guo felt himself being pulled into a new map by a strange force. Did he transmigrate? When Dopey-Guo came back to his senses, he felt a gust of wind blowing between his legs. He was surprised to find that he was directly teleported while he was squatting, and he was spiraling into the sky naked. In the conference room of the military training base in the western suburbs of Shanghai City, the old secretary sat on a long bench and looked at the big screen in front of him. There was a radar on the bottom right of the screen, and there were countless red dots on it. The teleportation has been activated, right? Have you confirmed the number? Yes, it has been confirmed. Standing next to the old secretary, Odd Shua gave a report. Before the teleportation officially began, we already had the teachers in charge of each school carefully confirm that all the students were in the dormitory building filling out the camp handbook. Even if they weren't in their dormitories, they went to the toilet in the dormitory building. Nothing was missed. The old secretary nodded. Yes, that's good. Like, the toilet. Hearing this, the mouths of the headmasters in the conference room couldn't help twitching. They could already imagine the surprise of some students who were taking a dump suddenly being teleported away. In this situation, whether it was *T or P, they would be so scared that they would hold it back, right? The old secretary smiled. It happened so suddenly, that's what's really happening. We need to see the students' true reactions, don't we? Old secretary is right, Odd Shua broke out in a sweat. Right now, they're going up. After the array teleports them to the map, it will automatically take them up to a height of 5,000 meters, and then finally put them down together so that they can freely choose where they want to land. Is there a problem with safety? Rest assured, old secretary, General E has already personally set up the small world to slow down when it's 100 meters from the ground. On the side, Odd Shua reported the situation. Furthermore, the instructors in charge of the survival drill this time have already entered the map. Their radar is blue, and Senior Immortal Toya is the overall commander to ensure the students' safety. The magic treasures inside are all specially made to cater to the small world. As long as the small world determines that they hit a vital spot and smoke rises from their body, they will be eliminated. The rules and elimination mechanism for the survival drill this time were in fact very simple to understand, and even easier than at the Spirit Sword Exchange meet. As the director of the general administration of 100 schools in Songhai City, it could be said that Audjua had put a lot of heart and soul into planning this matter. Ever since his superiors had given him the task, he had spared no effort in drawing up the process this time, and had prepared plans in advance for all kinds of possible scenarios. Because he knew Shifu was a person who never liked trouble and liked to keep a low profile, but no matter how meticulously prepared a plan was, it was inevitable that there would be a loophole. Standing next to the old secretary, Audjua had a troubled expression on his face. Secretary Dakong, I just received intelligence that the fluctuations from the gate between worlds are coming again, and the coordinates are very close to us. The gate between worlds? The old secretary frowned, feeling that this was a little too much of a coincidence. With a solemn expression, he lowered his head and replied, back then, General E and I joined hands to seal the gate between worlds. Under normal circumstances, it would have been impossible for the seal to be undone in such a short time. I've always felt that someone was playing tricks behind the scenes. The coordinates of the fluctuations from the gate between worlds are so close to us, which is indeed not good for us. If it's to harm the children, then it's bad. Old Secretary, should we ask for reinforcements? Reinforcements can be used as a contingency plan. Let's see how things go first. The old secretary waved his hand and frowned. No matter what, the headmasters of the 6 schools and I are here. We have to be responsible for the students' safety. Audjua was extremely astonished. He had never expected the old secretary to actually use reinforcements as a contingency plan. Is the gate between worlds really so terrifying? Back then, when the demon army retreated, the 10 of us joined hands to close the gate. After some calculations, the combined strength of the 10 of us was 1 billion jin, and we were only barely able to push the gate shut. But each of us held back and didn't use all our strength, because we didn't expect the gate to be so heavy. The old secretary seemed to have recalled many things. He stood up and sighed. If the gate between worlds appears again, I'll shut it even if I have to risk my life. If the demon army rises up again at this time, it won't be good. Chapter 216. This world of escape was huge, and it stretched as far as the eye could see. This was a small world which General E had specially prepared, and it was very rich in spirit chi. As soon as everyone entered the small world, they slowly rose up along with the power of the array, and finally stopped about 5,000 meters above the ground. Looking with his heavenly eye, Wang Ling noticed the boundary pillar at the center of the small world. At the very top of the boundary pillar was a flat top, and there were a lot of rugged mountain paths around it. Wang Ling realized that these paths had been designed to allow people to reach the top of the mountain. If they had a long-range magic treasure, the top of the boundary pillar would be a very advantageous ambush position. Outside the boundary pillar was an urban area with all kinds of high-rise buildings and imitation landmarks. In addition, Wang Ling also noticed that beyond the horizon of the small world, at the farthest point that his heavenly eye could reach, there was a thick black fog entrenched beyond the horizon. This thick fog was not Yao Qi. It was also a form of elimination in the competition system. After everyone landed on the ground, the thick black fog would begin to slowly shrink. If there was anyone who was obsessed with fighting or had forgotten about collecting magic treasures, there was a high chance that they would be swallowed up by the black fog, and the pocket world would automatically judge them as eliminated. Therefore, this military training exercise not only tested the students' adaptability, but it also taught the students how to control themselves. The foundation building stage was the entry stage of cultivation, and for cultivators who had just entered, the biggest taboo was greed. Tens of thousands of people were scattered in the vast sky, scattered in various positions. Wang Ling looked around casually and saw many of his schoolmates and the Alliance Army from number 59 high school. Wang Ling looked around, but didn't see any sign of his dumbass brother. Even Super Chen and the others had been teleported to who knew where. It didn't matter, Wang Ling rubbed his brow. In any case, he just needed to lay low in this competition like Teacher Pan had said. Wang Ling didn't want to fight anyone, because he knew that the group in the surveillance room outside could detect every student's movements through radar. Wang Ling didn't want to be too obvious. After a long while, Wang Ling sensed the fluctuations of the array again, and all the people who had been frozen in the sky started to fall. In the end, Wang Ling landed steadily on a barren desert. This was the least populated place, and he could avoid most of the students participating in the competition. Of course, Wang Ling wasn't the only one who had thought of this. There were more than 100 people who had chosen to land in the desert outside the city. The competition in the center of the city was the fiercest. It was very likely that as soon as they landed, they would start fighting over the magic treasures. The people who chose to live in the desert were all afraid of being turned into boxes the moment they landed. According to the rules of the competition, after being judged to be eliminated by the small world, the surviving person could pick up all the magic treasures on the eliminated person's body. Let's see what's around us first, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Although more than 100 people had landed in the desert, he had yet to find any trace of them. The environment of the desert was quite harsh. The temperature was more than 30 degrees Celsius higher than the center of the city, and there was an endless sandstorm. There wasn't even a single weed. It was dead silent. If he couldn't find any magic weapons like flying swords that he could control here, and the black fog outside the horizon just happened to spread here, from here to the center of the city, the people in the desert would undoubtedly die. Just as he was about to set out to search the area, the sand in front of him suddenly caved in, and a hole the size of a person appeared. Then, accompanied by a human-sized spirit light, Wang Ming actually climbed out of the hole. An Earth Escape Talisman. Wang Ming tugged at his windproof glasses, which hurt a little. As expected, I'm still not very used to using spirit talismans. This Earth Escape Talisman isn't very suitable in the sand. If I'm not careful, I might be buried before I can climb out. Wang Ling stared at the sand hole and pondered deeply. Didn't this guy have no spirit energy? How could he use a spirit talisman? I brought my team here this time, and I'm the only one who can't use spirit energy. But General Yi gave me this. Saying this, Wang Ming took out a golden talisman from his pants and smiled evilly. General Yi personally made this talisman, and it's connected to the source of his spirit energy. As long as I carry this golden talisman on me, I can also use magic treasures. But the golden talisman also has a time limit, which is only for a few days. Your brother, I, have finally turned the tables today. Wang Ling, saying this, Wang Ming pulled open his sleeve to reveal his wristwatch. This was a wristwatch that only staff members had. In order to avoid the possibility of students communicating with each other, the wristwatch had already been filtered out before they had been teleported in through the array. I blocked your signal just now, so you don't have to worry about your movements being monitored by the people outside. Also, look. Wang Ming used the wristwatch to make a simple setting, and a round disc appeared in the air. This was actually a radar. Ling, there seems to be a lot of people nearby. Do you want to ambush them and collect their parcels? Saying this, Wang Ming patted Wang Ling on the shoulder and smiled brightly, revealing his white teeth. Don't worry, Big Brother will protect you. Wang Ling was startled. You're just a maintenance staff member, why are you playing around? The two brothers walked forward, crossed a sand dune, and found a few scattered cacti in the desert up ahead. The desert was so hot that there wasn't even a single weed in the area Wang Ling had been in before. For a few cacti to appear here could already be considered a unique sight in the desert. The two of them hid behind the extremely unscientifically large cacti for about 30 minutes, but didn't find a single trace of anyone. Although they were very far away, Wang Ling could already hear the fierce exchange of gunfire in the center of the city, which was the sound of various magic weapons colliding. In less than half an hour since they had entered the small world, around several hundred people had already been eliminated. The number of people remaining was clearly written in the air above the plateau of the boundary pillar, 9,723, and it was still decreasing. But there wasn't the slightest movement in this desert. If it wasn't for the fact that he could still sense these people's auras, and if it wasn't for the fact that Wang Ming could still see the marks on the radar, he would never have thought that there would actually be over 100 people here. The most important thing was that this was a desert. The worst place in the entire small world. After another hour or so, Wang Ling raised his head and saw that the desert was still howling with wind and sand. Above his head were scattered clouds, and there wasn't even an ant as far as the eye could see. Chapter 217. Ever since he was a child, Wang Ming had never experienced what it felt like to operate a magic treasure with his own hands. For him, this was actually a rare opportunity. Unfortunately, he had already run into a wall before he could launch his counterattack. This bunch of people were really too good at hiding. For a whole hour and a half, there wasn't even the slightest bit of movement. Even the red dot on the radar hadn't moved at all. So it turned out that they were all planning to stay put and wait for the express delivery to be snatched. Furthermore, there wasn't a single magic treasure on the ground as far as the eye could see. This location was too bad, it was simply terrifyingly poor. Time flowed differently in the small world. Although the military training exercise this time was going to last 3 days, that was in accordance with the flow of time in the outside world. If they really had to find a place to hide until the poisonous fog continued to shrink, they would at least be able to make it into the top 100. They had to think of a way to do something. This was too boring. Wang Ling knew that as a mad scientist, his cousin had never been someone who could stay idle. Just as this dumbass elder brother was sighing in his heart about how boring it was, there was suddenly a flash of spirit light in the distance, and a square box slowly descended. An airdrop? Maybe there's something good inside. Wang Ming said, according to the law of checks and balances in this exercise, this desert should be the place with the least magic treasures, so if an airdrop lands, the things inside will definitely be very valuable. Talismans, elixirs, maybe even snacks. Wang Ling, wait, snacks. Wang Ming cupped his chin as he looked at Wang Ling and smiled. I was the one who came up with the idea of snacks. When I made the airdrop, I wanted to put a gift bag of snacks inside, which will help ease the loneliness of waiting. Oh, that's right, there are crispy noodle snacks in the gift bag, want to take a look? For some reason, Wang Ling, who had been indifferent to this survival contest from the very beginning, suddenly felt a little excited. It had to be said that Wang Ming's move was very brilliant. Since he had a goal, Wang Ming realized that Wang Ling was a lot more serious than his previous indifferent attitude. Previously, he had clearly been too lazy to even open his heavenly eye, but now he kept it open the entire time as he worked hard to advance in the direction of the airdrop. Wang Ming knew that it actually wasn't easy to see Wang Ling maintain his heavenly eye for a long time. Wang Ling's heavenly eye was a little special. When he activated it, his pupils would glow with a different kind of splendor, which would gradually turn golden, and in the end, look like 3 golden flowers that were slightly spread apart. It was as if he had wearing contact lenses. He was so handsome that he had no friends. Wang Ming remembered seeing the heavenly eye in its complete form when he and Wang Ling had played hide-and-seek as kids. Who would have thought that after so many years, it would feel like a lifetime had passed since he saw it again? Wang Ming was well aware that there was a trace of envy, but even more nostalgia. In his heart, Wang Ling knew very well that it a little bit of envy, but even more nostalgia. Wang Ming often thought that if he had developed the Dao Talisman seal back then earlier, he might have been a lot more cheerful than he was now. At the very least, he wouldn't have been so antisocial. The airdrop's location is just ahead. Wang Ming pointed in a certain direction. Previously, he hadn't carefully probed this desert with his spiritual senses. Actually, it wasn't like there was nothing wrong with it, there was still a designated landmark. Wang Ling didn't choose to directly teleport, but approached it bit by bit, because he could already smell a conspiracy from afar. Wang Ling didn't choose to directly teleport, but instead approached it bit by bit. Even from a distance, he could already smell a conspiracy. There was definitely someone lying in ambush at the location of the airdrop. If he suddenly teleported over, this kind of bug-like skill would appear here. It wouldn't be good if he was reported as a cheat. As far as the eye could see, the ruins were surrounded by rubble. The broken walls were very high, and there was a huge stone array and several ancient stone palaces inside. Wang Ming chose to bypass the front of the ruins and go in from the side. The front was directly under the sun, and it was really too conspicuous to walk under it. There was a huge stone wall on the side, and entering from the shadows was a good choice. But they hadn't gone far when Wang Ming immediately stopped when he noticed a red dot on the radar behind the stone wall up ahead. The brother in front, come out, I can already see you. Wang Ling really couldn't help complaining in his heart, this radar was really too heaven-defying. Actually, the person behind the stone wall had hidden himself pretty well. Wang Ling felt that if anyone else had passed by, they might not have realized that there was someone hiding behind it. A moment later, Super Chen walked out from behind the stone wall with his hands raised. Second brother is really amazing, you could even find me when I was hiding so well. So it's you. Wang Ming stared at the cushion in Super Chen's hands with an astonished expression. Is this a prayer mat? And it's an 8th grade prayer mat. Super Chen smiled. I found it while I was looking for you. I sensed second brother's aura from afar. You're pretty lucky to have picked up an 8th grade prayer mat so quickly. Wang Ming had an astonished expression on his face, because this was probably the best perception type magic treasure in the survival contest this time. The students here were all at the foundation establishment stage, so their spiritual senses had a limited range. But as long as they sat on this praying mat and used their senses, their range would increase by 50 times. With this 8th grade prayer mat, it was like having a walking radar. Have you seen anyone else? Wang Ming asked. I came from the outskirts, and saw a few people on my way here. Most of them are now moving in groups. I haven't seen Peanut and Dopey yet, I don't know where they've run off to, Super Chen answered honestly. By the way, do you and second brother lack anything? I picked up a lot of things on my way here. As he spoke, Super Chen took out a small golden brocade pouch, which startled Wang Ming again. An 8th grade storage bag? Where did you find it? This was the storage magic treasure with the largest storage space in the entire survival contest. If you wanted to survive long enough in this contest, it was very important to find a magic treasure with a large storage space. The larger the storage space, the more resources you could store on the map. Staring at this 8th grade storage bag, Wang Ming couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. This guy's luck was too good, he was simply full of luck. Didn't I pick up something on the way here? Super Chen scratched his head and said a little embarrassedly, on my way here, I noticed 2 groups of people exchanging fire. The Shao clan disciples from God Vision High School seemed to have slipped and blew up their teammates. Then, a God Vision High School boy was being chased by a group of girls with knives. Wang Ming frowned. Internal strife? I don't think so, it should be a relationship dispute. Super Chen thought for a while, and then said in alarm, I think I heard someone call that guy Brother Cheng, Wang Ling. Chapter 218. On the plateau at the top of the boundary pillar, the old devil reappeared in Jiang Liuyue's body. Looking at the vast small world, he was a little excited. I've finally made it in, I'm one step closer to the success of my master plan. Lord Devil Emperor, there are people monitoring the survival contest outside this time, and it seems that more than 100 people have entered the small world to protect the students. Is this really okay? Jiang Luyue raised her doubts in the stone ghost mask. Before entering this small world, I wrapped the purple gold gourd's mist around my body, so this small world couldn't sense me at all. Given the strength of that bunch of juniors, they can't sense my aura at all. The old devil sneered. Furthermore, my venerable self believes that my decision this time is simply a blessing from the heavens. Not only can this small world not sense my existence, I can also wantonly absorb the spirit energy here, using the array guiding flag to transfer the array to open the gate between worlds, and then activating the ancient array to absorb vitality chi to reconstruct the skeleton and flesh body. All of this consumed a huge amount of spirit energy. My venerable self had been worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the spirit energy, but now there's no need to worry at all. When my venerable self recovers my body, I'll come find you. On the boundary pillar, the old devil took a deep breath, and a spirit light rose from his hand. Through the stone ghost mask, Jiang Luiyue saw a jade pendant in the shape of a crescent moon appear in the old devil's palm. Lord Devil Emperor, this is, my venerable self's first love gave me this pendant. The old devil stared at the pendant, his eyes unexpectedly soft as water. Unfortunately, she died 1,000 years ago. My venerable self sealed her body in ice. Hearing this, Jiang Luiyue was a little astonished. She had never thought that this old devil would actually be a Casanova. My venerable self had been looking for a way to resurrect her all this time. Just as I found a reliable plan, I was targeted by that Yi Jianchuan guy, and we fought fiercely for several days. This directly drained my spirit energy, and it took me a very long time to recover my spirit energy. My resurrection has been delayed ever since. The old devil gripped the crescent moon pendant in his hand. To completely resurrect her, my venerable self needs to operate the wheel of time and find her reincarnation. Speaking up to this point, the old devil looked at the stone ghost mask. When the time comes, I might need your help. After a moment of silence, Jiang Luiyue replied, if Lord Devil Emperor has a request, this junior will definitely fulfill it. That's good. The old devil nodded and looked at the number of people in the sky. There were now less than 9,300 left. He needed to set up the vitality chi absorption array as soon as possible. Otherwise, the number of people would only decrease. But before that, a good cover was equally important. Looking at the dwindling number of people, the old devil took a deep breath. Then, let's open the gate between worlds first. We don't have much time left. He looked around and found a large desert in the northwest. The ruins there seem to be not bad. It's hidden enough. Let's open the gate between worlds there. As he spoke, his right hand blossomed with spiritual light. In an instant, the array guiding flag quickly turned into an invisible light and flew toward the ruins. Super Chen was dividing up the loot in the shadow of a stone wall on the side of the ruins. The 8th grade storage bag could really hold too many things, and Super Chen had straightaway fattened up. There were a lot of things inside. In addition to the 8th grade rush cushion which Super Chen was carrying, there was also a 4th grade one, as well as some spirit talismans and magic treasures of decent quality. 5 earth escape talismans, 3 aura concealing talismans, 3 armor piercing talismans, 1 first-class spirit sword, 1 first-class spirit boot, 1 8th grade immortal sword, and a number of chi and blood pills. These things actually weren't of much use to Wang Ling. Although Jinka hadn't been brought here, even if he wasn't completely serious, the power of his casual finger chi sword, which was restricted by the talisman seal, was already close to that of a first-class holy weapon. Of course, there were also some magic treasures in the 8th grade storage bag that even Wang Ling didn't understand. General Yi had used his own imagination to create these magic treasures, just like at the Spirit Sword Exchange meet the last time. The difference was that the magic treasures at the Spirit Sword Exchange meet the last time were just balls of data and virtual simulations. But the magic treasures now were all F***King real. For example, there was a small bumpy wooden board inside. Wang Ling couldn't figure out what it was for or what it meant at all. This is a godly weapon. Holding this wooden board, Wang Ming couldn't help sighing. I didn't expect you to find this thing. At that time, Super Chen had been in a hurry to snatch it, and hadn't had time to check its origin with the electronic illustrated handbook. What is this? Wang Ming answered without hesitation, a washboard. Wang Ling and Super Chen, in order not to arouse Super Chen's suspicions, Wang Ling bluntly chose a first-class spirit sword to carry with him, as well as an extra second-grade storage bag. In fact, Wang Ling wasn't afraid even if he didn't have a storage bag, because he could store things in his heavenly eyes field of vision. Wang Ming was even less courteous, and basically emptied the bag of consumables. He had picked up a few broken things on the way here, and had used up the only Earth Escape talisman he had while looking for Wang Ling. He hadn't used the golden talisman General Yi had given him yet. Boom! The three of them packed up their belongings and were about to set off, when there was a rumble inside the ruins. It's the airdrop box, there's a firefight. Wang Ming quietly checked the radar, and discovered that there were many red dots in the ruins, and there were 6 people in total. There were at least 2 to 3 groups of people. Looking over quietly, the 3 of them saw 5 teenagers next to the airdrop box, each of them holding a spirit sword. Wherever the tip of the sword pointed, the gravel and sand on the ground moved along with it, condensing into a wall. Earth and Wood Spirit Spell. These 5 people are from Reliance High School. Hiding behind a stone wall, Super Chin secretly observed in that direction. This was actually a battle of unequal numbers. Wang Ming sighed in his heart at this scene. 5 against 1, this person was probably done for. But very quickly, they realized that something wasn't right, because these 5 people were actually all on the defensive. On the other side, the purple-clothed young man from God Vision High School raised the corners of his mouth slightly in the face of the combined power of 5 people's Earth and Wood Spirit spell, and he sneered slightly. Reliance High School, it's over. With a hum, flames instantly surged out of his arm, and he smashed into the wall with a bang. Spirit light soared into the sky, and the intense spiritual pressure made Super Chen's scalp go numb. This young man from God Vision High School was really too strong. Although they were both in year 1, Super Chen felt that his strength wasn't equal to the other parties at all. Almost in an instant, the flames that rushed out of the young man's palm were like an all-conquering cannon that directly blasted the wall into powder. The 5 Reliance High School disciples were completely unable to resist the powerful disparity in strength. The stone wall was blasted open, and the 5 people threw themselves in all directions, smoke rising from their bodies at the same time. One of the eliminated disciples thumped the ground and glared angrily at the young man in front of him. Who are you? You've already been eliminated from the small world and are considered dead. Logically speaking, you shouldn't be talking. The young man slowly approached them, then spread open his palm, and the storage bags on the 5 people's bodies fell steadily into his hand with a pull of spirit energy. The young man smiled. The ancestral suction palm is still as useful as before. The eliminated disciple didn't give up, and asked, "Are you a disciple of the Shao clan?" Chapter 219. Shao Yuncheng. In the dark, Super Chen immediately frowned when he heard the young man in purple introduce himself. Wang Ming turned his head to look at him. Do you know this person? When I was in junior high a few years ago, I represented the school in the 5-kilometer long-distance run, and I think he beat me. Although I came in second, the gap was really too big. Super Chen sighed. It was only later that I found out that this Shao Yuncheng was an outer sect disciple of the Shao family, and ranked first in the outer sect. If he can successfully get into a good university in 2 years, he'll definitely be promoted to the inner sect. Wang Ling stared at the young man in purple expressionlessly. This person was indeed very talented, and was stronger than most of the grade 1 students in number 60 high school. If Wang Ling was completely excluded from the elite class, probably only someone at Lotus Sun's level would have the ability to fight this Shao Yuncheng. After killing the 5 Reliance High School students, the purple-clothed youth began to search through the storage bags of the 5 students. He fixed his gaze on one of the eliminated disciples. You've already picked up the airdrop over there, haven't you? The eliminated disciple was pretty stubborn. Hee, dead people don't talk. Go search it yourself, Shao Yuncheng shrugged helplessly, and could only confirm it himself. When he turned his head, the 5 Reliance High School students had already disappeared. After the green smoke signifying elimination was released, the small world's elimination mechanism would take effect. Any student who emitted the green smoke would be automatically teleported back to the small world after a minute. AI, what a bunch of good-for-nothings. Xiao Yunqing sneered in his heart as he searched through the airdrop box. After searching for a while, he had an astonished expression on his face. This is... Then, he quickly put the contents of the airdrop box into his storage bag. There seems to be something good in that airdrop box. From a distance, Super Chin only saw the young man in purple quickly guide spirit light into the storage bag. His movements were so fast that Super Chin couldn't see what he had taken out at all. But right after that, Super Chin heard Xiao Yunqing complain. There's a gift bag of snacks in this airdrop box. Xiao Yunqing took out an exquisite gift box from the box, opened the lid, and searched the box for a while. He took out a pack of crispy noodle snacks and threw it on the ground disinterestedly. F***CK. Why is the airdrop crate full of trash? As soon as he said this, Wang Ling's face instantly darkened. It was an aura that Xiao Yunqing had never felt before. He felt a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. In the next moment, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky above the ruins. Dark clouds shrouded the area, and silver snakes could be seen dancing in the air. Xiao Yunqing turned pale with fright as he raised his head. That was the small world's godly punishment stripe. Although the divine punishment bombardment zone would appear randomly on the map in this escape mechanism, there would be a public notification 5 minutes before the divine punishment bombardment would land. Xiao Yunqing couldn't understand why he suddenly fell into the god's punishment zone. In a panic, the purple-clothed youth wanted to hide in a stone hall not far away from him to avoid the divine punishment. However, it was too late. Xiao Yunqing was caught off guard by this divine punishment, completely out of his expectations. When he came back to his senses, Xiao Yunqing realized that there was already a wisp of green smoke rising behind him. Under the immense pressure of the godly punishment just now, the small world had actually judged him to be dead in advance. In the dark behind the stone wall, Wang Ming stared at the gradually disappearing Xiao Yunqing and smiled bitterly as he covered his face. His heart was as clear as a mirror. This murder had been triggered entirely by a packet of crispy noodle snacks. Before Xiao Yunqing disappeared, a lot of screens were flashing in the conference room outside. The old secretary, Odd Zhua, and the headmasters of the 6 schools were all watching the survival contest. Purple clothes, that's God Vision High School's uniform, right? That young man did pretty well. The old secretary was full of praise. Did you record that 1 versus 5 fight just now? Yes, we did. We have professionals who will record these exciting fight scenes into highlight reels, Odd Zhua replied. Headmaster son of God Vision High School smiled slightly. Old secretary, you flatter me. That kid is our school's Xiao Yunqing. The old secretary rubbed his chin. He's a disciple of the Xiao family. Headmaster son nodded. He's an outer sect disciple of the Xiao family, and is currently ranked number 1 in the outer sect. It's actually not easy for him to get to this point. The old secretary, why do you say that? Headmaster's son, an outer sect disciple of the Xiao clan doesn't receive as many resources as an inner sect disciple to begin with. I know this student Xiao Yunqing quite well. He doesn't have an old grandfather, a younger sister or a female confidant in his ring, and because of his spirit root, he can't even delve into the Xiao family's proudest alchemy skills. He doesn't usually go to auctions or the underground market, and is wholeheartedly obsessed with cultivation. Don't you think it's not easy for this student? All the headmasters, it does sound like it's not easy for this kid. The old secretary looked at the screen, his eyes fixed on Xiao Yunqing. Xiao Yunqing was currently searching through the airdrop box, and then he saw him take out a snack gift box and a packet of crispy noodle snacks from it, before finally throwing them on the ground in disappointment. Almost at the same time, everyone in the conference room saw that behind Xiao Yunqing, there was actually smoke. How on earth had he died? No one had clearly seen how this had happened. Headmaster's son got up excitedly. Can you show us the killer's image? The broadcast will automatically cut to the fight. In this case, if someone chose to assassinate him from a distance, the image won't be able to follow, Audiobook replied with a shake of his head. How could this be? Headmaster's son sat down in a daze and pulled at his hair like crazy. This Xiao Yunqing was his God Vision Academy's main force. He hadn't even made it to the top 9,000, and he had actually died just like that. Staring at the green smoke rising from Xiao Yunqing's back on the screen, Audiobook seemed to understand something. Actually, he had neglected to mention just now that there was actually a second reason for the wisp of green smoke coming out of Xiao Yunqing's back. In order to prevent students from using too much force in this survival contest, General Yi had specially set up an automatic judgment mechanism in the small world. When the small world determined that a person was definitely going to die, the smoke would automatically drift out. Judging from the way Xiao Yunqing had thrown the crispy noodle snacks, Audiobook had actually already completely understood at that time. He knew that Wang Ling was nearby. Only his Shifu had the power to influence the laws of the small world and directly determine that person's death. Chapter 220. How did this person die? Watching Xiao Yunqing disappear, Super Chen, who had been secretly observing all this time, had a surprised expression on his face. He felt that Xiao Yunqing's death was a little inexplicable. He hadn't even clearly seen how he had been hit, and the green smoke had already appeared on his back. Was this a trap? That shouldn't be possible. Using the 8th grade futon, Super Chen had sensed that they were the only ones in the vicinity of the remains. If someone had attacked with a long-range magic treasure nearby, they definitely wouldn't have been able to escape the detection range of the 8th grade futon. Furthermore, he seemed to have seen the godly punishment streak just now. The sky was suddenly shrouded in dark clouds that flickered like silver snakes. It wasn't until the green smoke appeared on Xiao Yunqing's back that the clouds dispersed. This process came very suddenly and disappeared very quickly. It lasted for about 30 seconds. Super Chen was sure that his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. Second brother, do you know what happened? Super Chen turned his head to stare at Wang Ming, who then turned his head slightly to look at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye. This culprit looked like nothing had happened as he stared straight at the crispy noodle snacks on the ground not far away, as if his soul had been sucked out of his body. Wang Ming knew that if he didn't explain, Super Chen would become suspicious. Turning his head to look around, and after confirming that there was no one around, Wang Ming held out his fist. Do you see this fist the size of a sandbag? Just now, what you saw was the last form of my Turtle Wave Heart Sutra, the no-show wave. As soon as he said this, Super Chen felt like his brain had short-circuited. After several dozen seconds of silence, Super Chen suddenly turned his head to look at Wang Ming, and his eyes lit up. It was a look full of respect and adoration, and Wang Ming felt a little uncomfortable being stared at like that. Second brother, you're too strong. Super Chen's eyes sparkled. In fact, Wang Ming still felt that it was a pity in his heart. He actually hoped that one day Wang Ling would look at him the same way Super Chen did. But unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen. After confirming that there was no one nearby, the three of them surrounded Xiao Yunqing and started to search the storage bag he had left behind. Wang Ling silently put the crispy noodle snacks on the ground into his storage bag. Previously, Super Chen had seen Xiao Yunqing pick up something from the airdrop box with a surprised look on his face. After confirming it repeatedly, Super Chen took out a one-time-use magic treasure from his storage bag. It was a sparkling glazed phoenix cup with red, green, and yellow as the main colors. It's actually the phoenix cup. Even without the electronic illustrated handbook, Super Chen recognized this magic treasure's origin. In junior high school, almost everyone had been to Songhai City's museum, and this phoenix cup was an ancient magic treasure recorded in the museum's history. Rumor had it that it was the unique magic weapon of the Fire Emperor, one of the 3 emperors in ancient times. Currently, only a small fragment of the phoenix cup was stored in the museum. The whereabouts of the other fragments were long unknown. Wang Ling stared at the phoenix cup, lost in thought. He had read about it in ancient texts and knew that the phoenix cup had a great history. After all, it came from the ancient era, the same era as Old Demon Han and Old Demon Wang. At that time, the three emperors' magic weapons and Old Demon Han's sky bottle were great magic treasures that were neck and neck, and even had the title of a demigod weapon at that time. But the Phoenix Cup in the airdrop box had clearly been specially made by General Yi to popularize history among the students during the military training exercise for the 6 schools. There were actually a lot of one-time use magic treasures that General Yi had specially designed for the survival contest, based on famous magic weapons that had appeared in history. Super Chin carefully checked it with the electronic illustrated handbook, and the results were astonishing. This Phoenix Cup's lethality is actually at level 8. Even its damage range is at level 8. This is a great killing weapon. Max level. Wang Ming also stared at the Phoenix Cup and raised his eyebrows. Actually, this design is also reasonable. After all, the Phoenix Cup's power in ancient times was extraordinary. It's a demigod weapon that can summon a fire phoenix. In ancient texts, there is a history of the Fire Emperor throwing the cup in anger to destroy a demon city. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming couldn't help thinking. No wonder Xiao Yunqing had that kind of expression just now. This thing's lethality is really too great. If it's thrown into the city center, it's the same as summoning a godly punishment circle. At that time, anyone who's exposed to the sun will be eliminated. At that moment, Super Chen's electronic illustrated handbook vibrated, and a warm reminder appeared on it, which had been sent by Immortal Toya remotely. Super Chen looked at the message. Senior Toya said that the poisonous fog will start to shrink in 10 minutes. Should we retreat first? Those people lying in ambush in the desert should have already run toward the city center. Don't rush, we still have time. Since he had personally participated in making the map for this survival contest, Wang Ming knew the map's environment like the back of his hand. There's actually a small magic array in the ancient temple in front of the remains. What kind of magic array? Asked Super Chen. Have you heard of the ancient barter array? Wang Ming explained, the history of the magic array is based on this ancient barter method. In ancient times, this type of ancient barter array, which was set up by ancient almighties, would often appear. After you threw something precious into it, you would be able to exchange it for something of equal value. To put it bluntly, it was a kind of mutual benefit. But this kind of ancient barter array is actually quite deceptive. Sometimes what you want might not be what you want. As the three of them spoke, they walked toward the dilapidated ancient temple in front of them. Sure enough, as Wang Ming had said, there was a small magic array in the center of this half-open ancient temple. It actually wasn't very big, and was only the size of a millstone. Engraved on the side of the array were ancient characters that no one could understand. Super Chen looked at it in amazement. Brother Air, is this the ancient barter array from ancient times? That's right. Wang Ming nodded. Nowadays, very few people know how to set up this kind of array. General Yi personally set it up. But why did this kind of thing appear in the survival contest? Asked Super Chen. On the one hand, it's to popularize history, and on the other hand, it's probably General Yi's own bad taste. You can think of this magic array as an Easter egg, answered Wang Ming. Wang Ling, Super Chen, then what do we do? Wang Ming, just throw in anything you don't think is useful from your storage bag. Oh. Super Chen directly took out the extra 4th-class prayer mat from his storage bag and threw it in. The instant it approached the light of the magic array, it turned into powder and then gradually melted into the array. Holding their breaths, they quietly watched the changes in the array. Before long, Wang Ling saw a ray of light appear. It was the array spirit of the ancient barter array. There was a flash of spirit light in the array spirit's hands, and 3 items instantly appeared between them. It looked at Super Chen with a placid expression, and asked in an extremely low and magnetic voice, "May I ask, did you lose this gold cushion, silver cushion, or this jade cushion?" You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.